I was standing in front of the mirror, tightening the Windsor knot on my best Sunday tie. I was preparing to celebrate the birthday of a man I despised just to please a daughter I adored. But as I reached for my keys, my phone buzzed on the dresser. It wasn't a birthday greeting, it was a warning shot. My lawyer sent a text that consisted of 3 words: "Call me, now." I dialed his number, and what he told me next didn't just break my heart, it turned it into stone. My name is Moses Carter. I spent 40 years fixing subway trains for the MTA in New York City. I know how to spot a hairline crack in the steel before the wheel breaks, but I missed the crack in my own family. I am 71 years old, and tonight I found out that the daughter I raised alone is plotting to bury me before I am even dead. Before I tell you how I walked into the lion's den with a smile on my face, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand tall when your own blood tried to bring you to your knees. The tie was silk, a deep navy blue that my wife Ruth had bought for me 30 years ago. I only wore it on special occasions. Tonight was supposed to be special. My son-in-law Brad was turning 35. Brad is a man who wears Italian suits and smiles with too many teeth. He is a venture capitalist, which as far as I can tell means he spends money. He doesn't have to buy things he doesn't need. My daughter Keisha married him 5 years ago. Keisha is a pharmacist. She is smart and beautiful, and she has the same gentle eyes as her mother. But lately, those eyes have looked tired. Lately, she looks like a woman walking on a tightrope trying not to look down. Yesterday, Keisha called me. Her voice was sweet, but there was a tremor in it, a nervousness that I brushed off as stress. "Daddy," she said, "please come to dinner tomorrow. It is Brad's birthday, and it would mean so much to him. And Daddy, bring that folder with the tax papers for the garage. Brad wants to look them over. He says he can help you optimize your assets. He says he can save you a lot of money with the city." I agreed. I always agree when it comes to Keisha. Since Ruth passed away 10 years ago, Keisha is my whole world. If she wanted me to sit through a dinner with her insufferable husband, I would do it. If she wanted Brad to play accountant with my papers, I would let him. I figured it was harmless. Brad likes to feel important. He likes to think he is the smartest man in the room. I usually just nod and let him talk while I eat my steak. I looked around my bedroom. It is a simple room in a small house that sits right next to my life's work. Carter's garage. 3,000 square feet of brick and concrete that I bought in 1985 when this neighborhood was nothing but warehouses and stray dogs. I fixed cars here. I fixed trucks here. I fixed the city buses when the contracts came through. I worked 16-hour days with grease under my fingernails and sweat in my eyes to pay for Keisha's college, to pay for her wedding, to pay for the down payment on that mansion she and Brad live in. Now the neighborhood has changed. The warehouses are gone, replaced by glass towers and coffee shops that sell lattes for $7. They call it the Innovation District now. My garage sits right in the middle of it like a stubborn old rock in a stream. Developers have been knocking on my door for years, offering me checks with lots of zeros. Last month, a man offered me $15 million for the land. I told him to get off my property. I don't need $15 million. I need my shop. I need the smell of engine oil and the sound of a ratchet turning. It is who I am. I picked up the manila folder from the nightstand. It contained the deed to the land and the tax assessments. Nothing secret, public records mostly. But Keisha said Brad needed the originals to run his numbers. I tucked the folder under my arm and checked my watch. 5:30 p.m. I was running late. That was when the phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. Solomon. Solomon is my lawyer, but he is more than that. We marched together in Selma in '65. We played chess in the park every Sunday for 20 years. He is 80 years old and still sharp as a razor blade. He doesn't text. He hates texting. So when I saw the message, I froze. "Call me, immediately." I didn't hesitate. I hit the dial button. He picked up on the first ring. "Moses," he said. His voice was breathless, like he had been running. "Where are you?" "I am at home, Solomon. I am getting ready to go to Keisha's house." "Do not go," Solomon commanded. "Do not get in that car. Sit down, Moses." "I am standing, Solomon. What is wrong? Is it my heart?" "Did the doctor call you?" "It is not your heart, Moses. It is your back. There is a knife in it." The room went quiet. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. Keisha sent over the digital files, Solomon said, his voice shaking with rage. She sent them to my secure portal an hour ago. She said you authorized it. She said you wanted me to review the drafts before you signed them tonight. I frowned. Review what drafts? I am just bringing tax papers, Solomon. Moses listened to me carefully. The documents she sent are not tax papers. There are 2 documents in that file. The first one is a quitclaim deed transferring 100% of the title of Carter's garage to Brad and Keisha Sterling for the sum of $1. I felt the blood drain from my face. My knees felt weak, but I didn't sit. I locked my legs. And the second document, I whispered. The second document is a medical power of attorney, Solomon said softly. But it is not a standard one, Moses. It has an immediate activation clause based on cognitive decline. It includes 3 affidavits from a Dr. Julian Sterling claiming that you are exhibiting signs of early-onset dementia and paranoia. It gives them the power to commit you to an assisted living facility involuntarily if you contest the property transfer. I dropped the manila folder. It hit the floor and papers slid out. Tax papers. Useless decoys. Dr. Julian Sterling, I asked. That is Brad's brother, the psychiatrist in Chicago. I haven't seen him in 5 years. I know, Solomon said. It is a setup, Moses. It is a trap. They are going to get you over there, get you to drink some wine, maybe get you emotional, and then put a pen in your hand. If you sign the deed, you lose the land. If you refuse or get angry, they pull out the medical papers and say you are having an episode. They want the land, Moses. They want to sell it. I heard rumors that Brad is in trouble, big financial trouble. He needs your $15 million to cover his hole. I looked in the mirror. I saw an old man in a suit. Gray hair, wrinkled skin, but the eyes were the same. The eyes of a man who had stared down racists and riots and recessions. They think I am weak, I said. They think I am a confused old man who will just sign whatever his sweet daughter puts in front of him. Moses, don't go. Solomon pleaded. I will file an injunction in the morning. We will block everything. Stay home, lock your door. I reached down and picked up the folder. I put the papers back in order. No, Solomon, I said. Moses, are you crazy? You are walking into an ambush. I have to go, I said, my voice steady. I have to know Solomon. I know Brad is a snake. I always knew. But Keisha, my little girl, I need to look her in the eye. I need to see if she hands me that pen. I need to know if she is a hostage or a conspirator. Moses, if you go there and lose your temper, they will use it against you. They will record you. They will twist every word. I won't lose my temper, I said. I am a mechanic, Solomon. When an engine is broken, you don't hit it with a hammer. You listen to it. You find the fault. And then you take it apart piece by piece. I hung up the phone. I stood there for a moment in the silence of the house I had shared with Ruth. I looked at her picture on the dresser. I am sorry, Ruth, I whispered. I tried to protect her from the world, but I forgot to protect her from herself. I walked out of the bedroom. I grabbed my coat. I walked out to my truck. It is a 2018 Ford F-150 black engine tuned to perfection. I climbed in and started the ignition. The engine roared to life, a deep, powerful rumble that vibrated through the seat. I backed out of the driveway. I looked at the garage one last time. My name was painted above the door in fading white letters. Carter's Garage. It wasn't just a building. It was my legacy. It was the proof that I existed. And they wanted to take it. They wanted to turn it into a glass tower and erase me. I drove toward the highway. The sun was setting, turning the sky the color of a bruise. I wasn't driving to a birthday party anymore. I was driving to a crime scene. And the victim wasn't going to be me. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small digital voice recorder I used for diagnosing engine noises. I checked the batteries. Full. I slipped it into the inside pocket of my jacket right next to my heart. Let them play their games. Let them smile their fake smiles. I was bringing something to dinner that wasn't on the menu. I was bringing the truth. I merged onto the expressway, heading north toward the wealthy suburbs where my daughter lived in her golden cage. My hands were steady on the wheel. My heart was cold. Tonight, the wolf was inviting the sheep to dinner. But the wolf forgot one thing. This sheep has iron teeth. The driveway of my daughter's house was paved with stone imported from Italy. It was smooth, perfectly leveled, and cost more than the first house I ever bought. I pulled my 19-year-old Ford F-150 right up to the front door, parking it next to Brad's gleaming silver Porsche. My truck leaked a little oil. I hoped it would leave a stain. It felt like a small act of rebellion in a place that tried so hard to be perfect. I stepped out into the evening air. The house loomed over me. It was a modern monstrosity of glass and steel, sharp angles and cold lighting. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a bank branch or a mausoleum for rich people who had forgotten how to live. I adjusted my jacket, feeling the weight of the digital recorder in my inside pocket. It was recording. I was walking into the lion's den and I was bringing my own ammunition. I rang the doorbell. It didn't buzz. It chimed a melodic, soulless tune. The door swung open almost immediately. Brad stood there. He was wearing a velvet smoking jacket and holding a crystal glass of amber liquid. He looked like he had stepped out of a magazine for men who don't know how to change a tire. "Moses," he boomed, his voice too loud, too cheerful. "You made it. Come in, come in." We were just opening a bottle of the good stuff. He reached out to shake my hand. His palm was soft, damp. It was the hand of a man who moved money, not mountains. I squeezed it just hard enough to let him know the grip of a mechanic hadn't faded with age. He flinched, pulling his hand back quickly. "Happy birthday, Brad," I said, stepping into the foyer. The air conditioning was cranked up so high it felt like a meat locker. "Thank you." "Thank you," Brad said, guiding me down the hallway. "You know I told Keisha not to make a fuss, but she insisted. She is in the kitchen, putting the finishing touches on the roast." I walked toward the kitchen. The house smelled of expensive candles and anxiety. I found Keisha standing over the island, arranging asparagus on a platter. She looked thin. Too thin. Her collarbones were sharp ridges beneath her silk blouse. When she heard my footsteps, she jumped. "Daddy," she whispered. She turned and hugged me. She felt fragile in my arms like a bird with hollow bones. She smelled of lavender soap and fear. "Hey, baby girl," I said softly, kissing the top of her head. "You look beautiful." She pulled away, and I saw her eyes. They were red-rimmed. She had plastered a smile on her face, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her hands were trembling as she picked up the serving spoon. The silver rattled against the china. "Here, let me help you with that," I said, reaching for the platter. "No," she said quickly, too quickly. "Go sit down, Daddy. Brad has the wine ready. Please just go sit down. Everything has to be perfect." She looked at the doorway, terrified that Brad might see me helping her. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't just stress. This was terror. I walked into the dining room. The table was set for 3, but it was long enough to seat 20. I took my usual spot at the side. Brad sat at the head, of course, the king of his mortgaged castle. He poured me a glass of wine. It was a dark, heavy red. "This is a 20-year-old Cabernet Moses," Brad said, swirling his glass. "It costs $600 a bottle. You have to let it breathe. It has notes of leather and tobacco." I took a sip. It tasted like vinegar and pretension. "It is good, Brad," I lied. We ate in a silence that was punctuated only by the scrape of silverware on porcelain. Keisha barely touched her food. She pushed a piece of potato around her plate, staring at it as if it held the secrets of the universe. Every time Brad moved, every time he reached for the salt, she flinched. So Moses, Brad started wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. "I have been thinking a lot about you lately, about the garage." I cut a piece of roast beef. The meat was dry. "Have you now?" I said. "Yes," Brad continued, leaning forward, his eyes gleaming in the chandelier light. "You are 71 years old. You have worked hard your whole life. You deserve to rest. You deserve to travel, to see the world, not be stuck under the hood of a car breathing in fumes every day." "I like the fumes," I said calmly. "Keeps the lungs strong." Brad laughed, a short, dismissive bark. "That is the spirit. But let's be realistic. The city is changing. The regulations are getting tighter. The property taxes in the innovation district are skyrocketing. I ran the numbers, Moses. Next year, your tax bill is going to triple. Can the garage support that?" I chewed slowly. I knew exactly what he was doing. He was creating the problem so he could sell me the solution. "It might be tight," I admitted, playing along. "Exactly," Brad said, slamming his hand on the table. "It is going to be a burden, a heavy burden. And Keisha and I, we worry about you. We don't want you stressing over city ordinances and tax codes in your golden years." He reached under his chair and pulled out a leather portfolio. He placed it on the table and slid it toward me. It wasn't the folder I had brought. It was sleek black and ominous. I took the liberty of drawing up some paperwork, Brad said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. This is a comprehensive asset management plan. Essentially, it allows me to represent you with the city. I can use my connections to file for exemptions to lower your tax bracket. But to do that, I need to be listed as the primary administrator of the property, just for tax purposes, of course. I stared at the black leather folder. Inside that folder was the quitclaim deed, the document that would strip me of everything, the document that Solomon had warned me about. Keisha made a small whimpering sound. I looked at her. She had dropped her fork. Sorry, she whispered. I am so clumsy. Leave it, Brad snapped without looking at her. He uncapped a heavy gold fountain pen and held it out to me. Just sign on the tabbed pages, Moses, Brad said, smiling that shark smile. I will handle the filing. You won't have to lift a finger. You can just go back to fixing cars and let me worry about the bureaucrats. Think of it as my birthday gift to you. Peace of mind. I looked at the pen. I looked at the folder. Then I looked at my daughter. Keisha was staring at the tablecloth. Her hands were gripping the edge of the table. She was gripping it so hard that her knuckles were white, bone white. Her whole body was vibrating with a silent scream. She knew. She knew what was in that folder, and she was terrified of what would happen if I signed it, and she was equally terrified of what would happen if I didn't. I reached out and took the pen. Brad's eyes lit up. He leaned in closer, hungry for the kill. You are a good son-in-law, Brad, I said slowly, always thinking of the family. Always, Brad said. I opened the folder. I didn't read the text. I knew if I started reading, I would want to punch him in the throat. I saw the line for the signature. I saw my name printed there. Grantor Ezekiel Moses Carter. I lowered the pen toward the paper. I saw Keisha close her eyes. A single tear escaped and rolled down her cheek. That was the signal. That was the confirmation I needed. My daughter wasn't a partner in this crime. She was a casualty. I held the pen just an inch above the paper. My hand started to shake. I made it shake. I let the tremor travel up my arm to my shoulder. Are you okay, Moses? Brad asked, impatience creeping into his voice. Just sign right there. I am feeling a little dizzy, I muttered. I reached for my wine glass with my left hand, the hand that was holding the folder down. I didn't just knock the glass over, I swept it. With a clumsy jerk of my elbow, I sent the heavy crystal goblet flying. It hit the table with a shatter. The dark red wine's $600 worth of fermented grapes exploded across the white tablecloth. It splashed onto the roast beef. It splashed onto Brad's velvet jacket. And most importantly, it soaked the open folder. Oh God, I cried out, dropping the pen. Look at what I have done. I am so sorry. My hand it just seized up. Brad jumped out of his chair, his face twisting into a mask of pure rage. He looked at his ruined jacket. He looked at the sodden purple documents. You stupid old... He started to shout, but he caught himself. He took a deep breath, forcing the mask back on. It is okay, Moses. It is just wine. Accidents happen. He reached for the folder, trying to salvage the papers. No, I said, snatching the folder up before he could touch it. I have ruined them. I can't sign these. They are a mess. Look, the ink is running. The city won't accept this. I stood up, holding the dripping folder against my chest, letting the wine stain my own shirt. I am so embarrassed, I said, playing the part of the confused geriatric to perfection. I need to go. I need to clean this up. Brad moved to block my path. Moses, wait. We can print new ones. I have a printer in the office. It will just take a second. No, I said, shaking my head obstinately. I am too shaken up. My blood sugar must be low. I need to go home and take my medicine. I will take these with me. I will dry them out and read them over when my head is clear. I will sign them tomorrow, Brad. I promise. I saw panic flare in his eyes. He couldn't let me leave with the papers. If I read them, if I showed them to a lawyer, his game was over. Moses, give me the folder, he said, his voice hard now, commanding. You are not in a condition to drive. Stay here. Keisha, get your father some water. I gripped the folder tighter. I am going home, Brad, I said, my voice dropping the wavering tone for just a second. Unless you want to wrestle a 71-year-old man for a wine-stained piece of paper in front of your wife. He hesitated. He looked at Keisha, who was sobbing silently in her chair. He looked at me. He saw something in my eyes. Maybe he saw the mechanic who used to swing a sledgehammer. Maybe he saw that I wasn't quite as frail as I pretended to be. He stepped aside. Fine, he spat. Go home. But bring those papers back tomorrow morning, Moses. First thing, the tax deadline is strict. I said. Happy birthday, Brad. I walked out of the dining room. I didn't look back at Keisha. I couldn't. If I looked at her, I would have grabbed her and dragged her out of there, and Brad might have done something desperate. I had to get the evidence first. I had to secure the high ground. I walked out the front door into the humid night air. I climbed into my truck. I threw the wine-soaked folder onto the passenger seat. I started the engine. As I pulled away, I looked back at the house. Through the dining room window, I saw Brad standing over Keisha. He was shouting. He was pointing at the door. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt. Hold on, baby girl, I whispered to the darkness. Daddy is coming back. And next time I am not bringing wine. I am bringing a war. I drove into the night, the recorder in my pocket still running, capturing the sound of my own heavy breathing and the promise of retribution. The lion had let me walk out of the den. That was his first mistake. And it would be his last. The wine stain on the white tablecloth looked like a gunshot wound spreading slowly and soaking into the fabric. Brad stared at it with a vein pulsing in his temple. His velvet jacket was ruined. The mask of the benevolent son-in-law was slipping, and for a second I saw the real Brad. The Brad who looked at me not as a family member but as an obstacle that had just made a mess on his stage. I am so sorry, I stammered, clutching the wine-soaked folder to my chest like a shield. I really am losing my touch. I should go wash this off. Brad took a deep breath. I could see him physically forcing the rage back down into his gut. He needed me compliant. He couldn't scream at me yet, not until he had my signature. It is fine, Moses, he said through gritted teeth. Just an accident. Keisha, get some salt. I will go to the laundry room and get the stain remover. Moses, why don't you go clean up in the guest bathroom? We can salvage this. He turned and marched out of the dining room, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood. Keisha ran into the kitchen, terrified. I was alone. I didn't go to the guest bathroom. I waited 3 seconds, counting them in my head like I used to count the seconds between station stops. 1, 2, 3. I moved. I didn't move like an old man with a bad back. I moved like a man who knew the clock was ticking. I walked softly down the hallway, past the guest bathroom, past the Art Deco mirror that cost more than my first car, and straight toward the double mahogany doors at the end of the hall. Brad's home office. I knew he kept it locked usually. Brad liked his privacy. He liked to play the mysterious businessman. But tonight, in his haste to get the wine out of his jacket, he might have been careless. I reached for the handle. It turned. I slipped inside and closed the door behind me, leaving it cracked just a fraction of an inch so I could hear if anyone approached. The room was dark, illuminated only by the glow of 3 large computer monitors and the streetlights filtering through the blinds. It smelled of stale coffee and desperation. For a man who claimed to be a master of the universe, Brad's sanctuary felt like a bunker. I walked to the desk. It was a massive slab of black glass. On the surface, it was pristine. A laptop, a gold pen set, a framed photo of Keisha looking happy from 5 years ago. But I know mechanics, and I know men like Brad. The surface is always polished. The rot is always underneath. I pulled open the top drawer. Nothing but office supplies. I pulled open the second drawer. Empty. I knelt down and opened the bottom drawer, the deep one meant for files. It was jammed full. Papers were shoved in there, haphazardly crumpled and chaotic. This wasn't the filing system of a successful venture capitalist. This was the hoarding of a man who was drowning. I started flipping through them. Unpaid credit card bills, Amex black card over limit, a letter from a Porsche dealership threatening repossession. And then I found it. It was a thick envelope with the logo of First National Bank stamped in red. The words "Notice of Default" were printed in bold type across the top. I pulled it out and held it up to the light of the computer screen. To Bradley and Keisha Sterling. Regarding property address 450 Highland Avenue. Notice of intent to foreclose. I read the numbers and my breath caught in my throat. Past due amount $140,000. Total principal remaining $2.4 million. They hadn't paid the mortgage in 6 months. My daughter was living in a house that didn't belong to her anymore. She was sleeping in a bed that the bank owned, and she probably didn't even know it. Brad had been intercepting the mail, hiding the truth, keeping up the illusion of wealth while the walls were closing in. I felt a surge of nausea. This was why Keisha looked so thin. This was why she jumped at every sound. She knew something was wrong, but he was gaslighting her, telling her everything was fine while he drove them off a cliff. But why now? Why the sudden pressure to sign the deed tonight? A foreclosure takes time. He could stall the bank for months. He didn't need my land just to pay the mortgage. He needed something bigger. I kept digging. I shoved the foreclosure notice back into the drawer and reached for a blue folder that was sitting separate from the rest, hidden under a stack of car magazines. It was labeled Apex Development Group. I opened it. It wasn't a bill. It was a contract. A legal binding contract titled Option to Purchase Real Estate. I scanned the first page. Seller Bradley Sterling acting as agent for Ezekiel Carter. Buyer Apex Development Group. Property Carter's garage and adjacent lot. I skipped to the terms. Purchase price $12 million. Closing date Friday, October 24th. Friday. That was 3 days from now. I felt the room spin. Brad hadn't just proposed to manage my property. He had already sold it. He had taken a gamble, a massive criminal gamble. He had signed a contract promising to deliver my land to a developer by this Friday. And then I saw the kicker. The clause that made my blood run cold. Non-refundable deposit received $5 million. He had already taken the money. He had taken $5 million in cash from a developer, probably to pay off his gambling debts or his bad investments, and he had spent it. Gone. And now the closing date was here. If he didn't hand over the deed by Friday, Apex Development would sue him. They would expose him. And knowing the kind of people who develop real estate in this city, they might do worse than sue him. He was a dead man walking, and he was trying to use my life's work as his life jacket. I looked at the date on the contract. He had signed it 2 months ago. For 2 months he had been smiling at me, shaking my hand, eating my food, all while knowing he had sold my history for parts. And Keisha. Did she know? I looked at the photo of her on the desk. She looked so young, so innocent. No. She didn't know about the $5 million. She knew they were broke. She knew they were in trouble. But she didn't know her husband had committed grand larceny. He was using her too. He was using her fear to pressure me. I pulled my phone out. I needed a picture. I needed proof. I snapped a photo of the foreclosure notice. I snapped a photo of the Apex contract, specifically the page with his signature and the deposit amount. My hands were shaking, but the images were clear. I had him. I had the smoking gun. I started to put the papers back exactly how I found them. I needed to get out of here. I needed to get to Solomon. I needed to get Keisha and run. I slid the blue folder back under the magazines. I closed the drawer. I stood up and adjusted my jacket, feeling the recorder against my chest. I took a deep breath, trying to slow my heart rate. I was a mechanic. I had just found the broken part. Now I knew how to fix it. I turned to leave, and then I heard the click. It was the sound of the lock on the door handle turning. I froze. The door swung open slowly. The hallway light flooded into the dark office, blinding me for a second. A silhouette stood in the doorway. It wasn't Keisha. It was Brad. He wasn't wearing his ruined velvet jacket anymore. He was in his shirt sleeves, the cuffs rolled up. He wasn't holding a bottle of stain remover. He was holding nothing but tension. He didn't look surprised to see me. He looked resigned, like he had expected this moment. He stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. The lock clicked again. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. I stood my ground. I didn't stammer. I didn't make excuses. I didn't play the clumsy old man anymore. The time for acting was over. Brad walked over to the desk. He leaned against it, crossing his arms over his chest. He looked at the drawer I had just closed. Then he looked at me. His face was shadowed, but I could see his eyes. They were cold, dead. The shark smile was gone, replaced by the flat stare of a predator who has been cornered. He tilted his head slightly to the side, studying me. "You never went to the bathroom, did you, Moses?" he said softly. I stared back at him. I didn't answer. He looked at the wine stain on my shirt. "You spilled that wine on purpose. You wanted me out of the room. You wanted to snoop." He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "I underestimated you, old man. I thought you were just a grease monkey who got lucky with real estate. I didn't think you had it in you to pull a stunt like that." He took a step toward me. "So tell me, Moses, what did you find? Did you find the bank notices? Did you find the threatening letters? Or did you find the big one?" He pointed to the drawer. "Did you find the Apex contract?" I didn't blink. "I found it." "Brad," I said, my voice low and steady, "I found the sale. I found the $5 million you stole, and I found the date. Friday. Brad nodded slowly. Friday, he repeated. That is the deadline. If I don't have that deed by Friday, Moses, my life is over. And if my life is over, Keisha's life is over too. He wasn't apologizing. He was threatening me. You sold my land, Brad, I said. You sold something that doesn't belong to you. That is fraud. That is prison. It is survival. Brad snapped, his voice rising. It is just dirt, Moses. It is a dirty old garage in a neighborhood that has moved on. You are holding on to the past. I am trying to build a future. You call this a future, I asked, gesturing to the foreclosure notice. You are bankrupt, Brad. You are drowning, and you want to drag me down with you. I want to save us, Brad yelled, taking another step. He was close now, too close. I could smell the wine on his breath. I need that signature, Moses. I need it tonight. You are going to walk back into that dining room and you are going to sign those replacement papers. And if I don't, I asked, bracing myself. Brad smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who has nothing left to lose. If you don't, he whispered, leaning into my face, then you are going to find out just how dangerous a desperate man can be. You love your daughter, don't you, Moses? You would do anything for her. I tensed my fists. Don't you dare threaten her, I growled. I am not threatening her, Brad said calmly. I am just telling you the facts. Keisha is listed as a co-signer on everything Moses. The fraud, the loans, the shell companies. If I go down, she goes down. She goes to prison. Is that what you want? Do you want to see your little girl in a jumpsuit because you were too stubborn to sign a piece of paper? I felt a cold rage wash over me. He had framed his own wife. He had set her up as his human shield. You are a monster, I said. I am a businessman, Brad corrected. And right now, I am closing a deal. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the fountain pen. He held it out to me. Sign the papers, Moses. Save your daughter. I looked at the pen. I looked at the man who had turned my family into a leverage play. I knocked the pen out of his hand. It skittered across the floor. I am not signing anything, I said. Brad's face twisted. He lunged at me, but he forgot one thing. I spent 40 years wrestling with steel wheels and rusty bolts. I might be 71, but I am made of iron. I shoved him back, hard. He stumbled, hitting his hip against the desk. I am leaving, Brad, I said, turning to the door. And I am taking my daughter with me. You can't leave, Brad screamed, grabbing a heavy glass paperweight from the desk. You are not walking out of here with that information. He raised the glass above his head. I turned to face him. I didn't flinch. Try it, son, I said. Try it and see what happens. We stood there in the dim office, the air thick with violence. An old mechanic and a young con artist locked in a standoff, and outside in the hallway I heard the soft footsteps of my daughter approaching the door. Daddy, she called out, her voice trembling. Is everything okay in there? Brad lowered the paperweight slowly. He looked at the door. He looked at me. This isn't over, Moses, he whispered. You have until Friday. I unlocked the door and threw it open. Keisha was standing there holding a tray of coffee, looking terrified. Get your coat, Keisha, I said. We are leaving. Daddy, what is happening? She asked, looking at Brad. Brad smiled that sick, fake smile again. Just a disagreement about business, honey, he said, smoothing his shirt. Your father is just confused. I grabbed Keisha's hand. I am not confused, I said, pulling her toward the front door. I have never been more clear in my life. We walked out into the night, leaving the predator in his cage, but I knew he wouldn't stay there. The hunt had just begun. The heavy click of the deadbolt sliding into place echoed through the foyer like a prison door slamming shut. Brad stood with his back to the door, his hand still resting on the lock. The mask was gone completely now. There was no more charming son-in-law, no more successful venture capitalist. There was only a desperate, cornered animal baring its teeth. Keisha let out a small whimper, pulling her coat tighter around her thin frame. She looked at Brad, then at me, her eyes darting back and forth like a trapped bird. She knew what that click meant. It meant the play was over and the violence was about to begin. You are not going anywhere, Moses, Brad said, his voice low and vibrating with a toxic mix of fear and arrogance. You think you can just waltz in here, drink my wine, snoop through my drawers, and then walk out with my wife. You think it is that simple. I stepped in front of Keisha, shielding her with my body. I didn't look at the lock. I looked at Brad. Open the door, Brad. I said, my voice calm the way it gets right before a fight. Or what Brad sneered, stepping away from the door and walking into the center of the hallway. Or you will hit me. Go ahead, old man. Assault me in my own home. That will look great on the police report. It will go nicely with the dementia diagnosis Dr. Sterling has already written up for you. He laughed a dry, humorless sound. You don't understand the leverage here, Moses. You think you found a smoking gun in my office. You think that foreclosure notice gives you power. It doesn't. It just proves that I am desperate, and you should never push a desperate man. He turned his gaze to Keisha. She shrank back against the wall. Tell him, Keisha, Brad commanded. Tell your father why you can't leave. Tell him why you are going to stay right here and make sure he signs those papers on Friday. Keisha started to cry, silent tears running down her face. She shook her head, unable to speak. Brad took a step toward her. I felt my muscles coil, ready to strike, but he stopped just out of reach. She won't tell you because she is ashamed, Brad said, looking at me with a smirk. So I will tell you. You see, Moses, your precious daughter has been a very naughty girl. Or at least that is what the records will show if I decide to make a phone call. What are you talking about? I asked, keeping my eyes locked on his. Keisha manages the inventory at her pharmacy, Brad said casually, examining his fingernails. Oxycodone, fentanyl, high street value stuff. For the past 6 months there have been discrepancies. Inventory missing, logs altered. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I looked at Keisha. Daddy, no, she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't take anything. He made me move the numbers. He said he needed to show a loss for the tax write-off. I didn't know he was... Brad cut her off. It doesn't matter what you knew, honey. It matters what the DEA thinks. And right now I have a flash drive in my safe with emails sent from your account authorizing shipments to shell companies that don't exist. Shell companies that trace back to nobody. He turned back to me, his eyes gleaming with malice. If I go down Moses, if you don't sign that deed, and I default on Friday, I am taking everyone with me. I will send that flash drive to the State Board of Pharmacy. Keisha won't just lose her job, she will lose her license. She will be charged with federal drug trafficking. She will go to prison for 20 years. He spread his hands wide as if presenting a gift. So you see, I am not just asking for a garage. I am selling you your daughter's freedom. $12 million for the land. Or your daughter spends the rest of her life in a cage. The choice is yours. I stared at him. I had seen evil in my life. I had seen greed. But this was something different. This was a rot so deep it had consumed his soul. He had set up his own wife. He had framed the woman he vowed to protect just to have an insurance policy for his own gambling addiction. You are bluffing, I said, my voice rough like gravel. You wouldn't send your own wife to jail. Brad's smile vanished. Try me. I am 3 days away from being destroyed by the mob and the banks. Do you think I care about a marriage license? I care about survival. He pointed a finger at my chest. Keisha is in debt up to her eyeballs because of me. Her credit is ruined. Her name is on every toxic loan I took out. She is drowning Moses. And you are the only one with a life raft. You are sitting on $15 million of dirt while your daughter suffocates. How selfish can you be? I felt the rage rising in my chest, hot and blinding. It wasn't the red-hot anger of a young man. It was the cold, white heat of an old man who has run out of patience. I took a step forward. I entered his personal space. I am 5 inches shorter than Brad. I was wearing a cheap suit compared to his silk shirt. But in that moment, I towered over him. I looked up into his eyes. I let him see the history etched in the lines of my face. You think I am scared of you? I asked quietly. Brad blinked, surprised by my proximity. You should be, he muttered. I hold all the cards. I laughed. It was a dark, dangerous sound. You hold paper, Brad. You hold threats. You think because you wear a suit and sit in an air-conditioned office you know what fear is. I took another step, pushing him back. Boy, I grew up in Alabama in the 60s. I have walked through mobs of men holding baseball bats and chains just to get to a library. I have had dogs set on me. I have had fire hoses turned on me. I have looked into the eyes of men who wanted to hang me from a tree just because I was breathing their air. I poked him in the chest with a finger, hard as iron. I didn't blink then. and I am certainly not going to blink for a soft-handed and high Ron like you. Brad stumbled back, hitting the wall. The arrogance was slipping, replaced by the confusion of a bully who has picked the wrong victim. You are just a kid in a vest, I spat. You think the world is a spreadsheet. You think people are assets to be liquidated. You forgot that people fight back. I turned my back on him. I dismissed him. I turned to Keisha. She was huddled in the corner, shaking. Come on, baby girl, I said, holding out my hand. We are leaving. He is lying. He can't hurt you. We will get a lawyer. We will go to the police ourselves. We will tell them he forced you. Keisha looked at my hand. She looked at the open door of freedom I was offering. For a second, I saw hope in her eyes. She reached out. Her fingers brushed mine. But then Brad spoke from the shadows. Go ahead, Keisha, he hissed. Go with him. But remember the photos. Remember the ones from the holiday party. The ones with the pills. Keisha froze. Her hand stopped in midair. She looked at me, and the light in her eyes died. I can't, Daddy, she whispered. Keisha, listen to me, I pleaded, grabbing her hand. We can fix this. Solomon can fix this. Don't stay here with him. He is dangerous. She pulled her hand away. It was a slow, painful rejection. You don't understand, she sobbed. He has everything. He planned this for years. If I leave, he will destroy me. I can't go to prison, Daddy. I can't. She backed away from me, moving toward Brad as if his abuse was safer than the unknown. Just sign the papers, Daddy, she begged. Please, just give him the garage. It is just a building. Is a building worth my life? I looked at my daughter, my strong, smart little girl. She was broken. He had broken her piece by piece until she believed that he was God and she was nothing. I looked at Brad. He was smiling again. He had won the round. He knew it. I straightened my jacket. I adjusted my tie. I looked at Brad with a look of pure promise. I am leaving, I said. Alone. Brad chuckled. Smart move, Moses. See you Friday. Don't be late. I walked to the door. I unlocked the deadbolt. The sound was loud in the silence. I opened the door, and the night air hit my face. I turned back one last time. I am not giving you the garage, Brad, I said. Brad's smile faltered. What? I said I am not giving you the garage, and I am not letting you take my daughter. You don't have a choice, Brad yelled, losing his cool again. I always have a choice, I said. You see, Brad, you made one mistake. You threatened a mechanic. You told me the machine is broken. You told me the brakes are gone. I stepped out onto the porch. Now I am going to take the whole engine apart. I slammed the door shut. I walked to my truck. My legs were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. I felt old. I felt tired. But I felt something else, too. I felt the weight of the recorder in my pocket. I climbed into the cab of the Ford. I looked through the window. I saw Brad grabbing Keisha by the arm, dragging her away from the window. I started the engine. I revved it hard, letting the roar echo off the facade of his expensive prison. I pulled out of the driveway. He thought he had me cornered. He thought Friday was his payday. He didn't know that Friday was going to be his judgment day. I grabbed my phone and dialed Solomon. Moses Solomon answered immediately. Are you okay? I am alive, Solomon, I said, merging onto the highway. Did you sign? No. But it is worse than we thought. He has Keisha. He has leverage. What kind of leverage? The kind that puts people in prison, I said. He is holding a gun to her head, Solomon. Not a literal one, but it might as well be. We need to go to the police, Moses. No, I said sharply. Not yet. He has dirt on her. He framed her. If we go to the police now, she goes down with him. We need to clear the board first. What do you want to do? I want to destroy him, Solomon. I want to strip him naked. I want to take his money, his reputation, and his freedom, and I want to do it before Friday. There was a pause on the line. That is a tall order, Moses. He is a slippery man. I am not asking for legal advice, Solomon, I said, turning toward the dark silhouette of my garage. I am asking for a war council. Meet me at the shop. Bring the coffee. I hung up. I drove through the city. The lights blurred past me. I thought about the baseball bats in Alabama. I thought about the fire hoses. I survived them. Brad Sterling was just a man in a vest. and I was going to show him what happens when you try to foreclose on a man's soul. The drive home from Brad's glass fortress was a blur of streetlights and simmering rage. My hands gripped the steering wheel of my truck so hard I thought the leather might crack. I kept checking my rearview mirror, expecting to see the silver Porsche following me or maybe a police car sent to arrest a confused old man. But the road behind me was empty. The city was asleep, unaware that a war had just been declared in its suburbs. I pulled into my driveway at 11:30. The house looked the same as I had left it hours ago. A small brick bungalow built in 1955, sturdy and unpretentious, sitting in the shadow of the massive garage that paid for it. But as I killed the engine, the silence felt different. It felt heavy. It felt like the air before a thunderstorm when the pressure drops and the birds stop singing. I didn't go inside immediately. I sat in the truck for a moment, listening. I listened to the hum of the city in the distance, the bark of a dog 2 streets over. I was listening for the sound of an engine that didn't belong. I was listening for footsteps. I got out of the truck and walked to the front door. I didn't just unlock it. I checked the frame. I checked the windows. I walked around the perimeter of the house, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. Everything seemed secure. But a locked door only stops an honest man, and I wasn't dealing with honest men anymore. I went inside and locked the deadbolt behind me. I didn't turn on the lights. I know every inch of this house. I know which floorboards creak and which ones hold silent. I walked through the dark living room, guided by the moonlight filtering through the blinds. I went to the hall closet. Behind the winter coats and the vacuum cleaner was a small safe. I spun the dial, right, left, right. The door clicked open. I reached in and pulled out my old Remington 870 shotgun. I hadn't fired it in years, not since we had a problem with coyotes near the shop, but I kept it clean. I kept it oiled. A mechanic takes care of his tools. I checked the chamber. Empty. I loaded 2 shells. The sound of them sliding into place was a comfort. I didn't go to the bedroom. I didn't take off my suit. I loosened my tie and took off my jacket, folding it neatly over the back of the armchair in the living room. I sat down facing the front window, the window that looked out onto the street. I put the shotgun across my lap, and I waited. I didn't sleep. Sleep is a luxury for the safe, and I wasn't safe. I sat there in the dark, watching the digital clock on the VCR blink away the minutes. 12 a.m., 1 a.m. My mind replayed the scene in Brad's office, the desperation in his eyes, the way he threatened his own wife. A man like that doesn't just go to bed angry. A man like that lies awake plotting. He had a deadline, Friday, 3 days. He needed me out of the way. He needed my signature or my silence. And since I had made it clear he wouldn't get my signature, I wondered what price he was willing to pay for my silence. 1:45 a.m. My eyes were getting heavy. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the ache in my joints. I shifted in the chair, trying to stay alert. I thought about Ruth. I thought about the rug under my feet. It was a Persian rug she had bought at an estate sale 20 years ago. She loved this rug. She said it tied the room together. 2 a.m. The sound came first. It wasn't the roar of a Porsche. It was the low rumble of a beat-up sedan. A muffler with a hole in it. The kind of car you buy for $500 and drive until the wheels fall off. I sat up straighter. I gripped the cold steel of the shotgun. The car slowed down as it passed my house. It didn't stop. It just slowed to a crawl. Then I saw the arm. A passenger window rolled down. An arm extended, holding something that flickered with a yellow light. A flame. I knew what it was instantly. I had seen them in the riots back in '68. A glass bottle, a rag stuffed in the neck, gasoline. Get down, I whispered to myself. I threw myself off the chair, diving onto the floor just as the glass shattered. Crash! The front window exploded inward. The bottle hit the center of the living room floor, right on Ruth's Persian rug. Whoosh! The sound of the gasoline igniting was like a sudden intake of breath. A ball of orange fire erupted in the middle of my living room. The heat was instant and intense, searing my face even from 5 feet away. The flames licked up the curtains, catching the old fabric and climbing toward the ceiling. I didn't freeze. I didn't panic. Panic is for people who don't understand how things work. Fire is simple. It needs fuel, heat, and oxygen. Remove one, and it dies. I scrambled to my feet, coughing as the black smoke started to fill the room. I didn't run for water. Water just spreads a gasoline fire. I ran for the kitchen. Under the sink, I kept a heavy-duty ABC dry chemical fire extinguisher. I kept one in every room of the house and 3 in the garage. Safety protocol. I grabbed the red canister. It was heavy, cold, and reassuring. I ran back into the living room. The fire was growing fast, feeding on the oxygen. The heat was intense, singing the hair on my arms. The rug was blazing. I pulled the pin. I aimed the nozzle at the base of the fire. Squeeze. A cloud of white powder blasted out, covering the flames. I swept the nozzle side to side, just like I taught my apprentices at the shop. Choke the fire. Starve it. The chemical powder coated the burning rug, smothering the gasoline. The orange flames fought back for a second, dancing wildly, but the powder was relentless. In 10 seconds, the fire was gone, leaving behind a charred black mess and a room filled with choking white dust. I stood there breathing hard, my chest heaving. The smoke alarm was screaming now, a piercing shriek that drilled into my skull. I walked over and ripped the battery out of the detector to silence it. Silence returned to the house. But it wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a battlefield after the first volley. I walked to the broken window. The cool night air was rushing in, swirling the smoke and dust. I looked out at the street. The car was gone, just a set of tire tracks peeling out on the asphalt. I looked down at the floor. In the middle of the blackened ruin of Ruth's rug lay a brick. It was wrapped in a piece of paper, but the paper had burned away. It didn't matter. I didn't need to read the message. The brick was the message. This wasn't intimidation. This wasn't a warning shot. This was an attempt to burn me alive in my sleep. If I had been in bed, if I had been asleep, I might not have heard the glass break until the smoke was already filling my lungs. I might have died in there. I felt a cold shiver that had nothing to do with the night air. Brad Sterling had just tried to kill me. I realized then just how deep in the hole he was. You don't throw a Molotov cocktail through a window because you are worried about a tax audit. You do it because you have a gun to your head. He owed money. Big money. Not to a bank. Banks send letters. Banks send lawyers. Brad owed money to the kind of people who don't write letters. He owed money to people who break kneecaps and burn down houses. The $5 million he took from the developer was probably already gone spent to keep the sharks at bay for a few more months. And now the deadline was Friday. If he didn't deliver the deed, he wasn't just going to lose his reputation, he was going to lose his life, and to save his own skin, he was willing to sacrifice mine. I looked at the charred rug. I touched the soot on the wall. This was my home. This was the sanctuary where I raised my daughter, where I loved my wife, and he had violated it. I walked back to the armchair. It was covered in white extinguisher dust. I picked up my jacket and brushed it off. I checked the shotgun again, still loaded. I sat back down facing the broken window. The wind blew in cold and smelling of gasoline. "This is war," I whispered to the empty room. He wanted a fight. He wanted to use fear. He thought because I was an old man I would be terrified. He thought I would call the police and hide, or maybe he hoped I would have a heart attack and die conveniently before Friday. He was wrong. I wasn't scared. I was clarified. The fire had burned away the last of my hesitation. There was no more doubt about saving Keisha's marriage. There was no more doubt about protecting Brad's reputation. He had crossed the line. He had brought fire into my house. Now I was going to bring the fire back to him. But I couldn't fight him force for force. He was desperate, and desperate men are unpredictable. If I called the police now, he would claim he knew nothing about the attack. He would say it was random vandalism. And meanwhile, he would still have his claws in Keisha. I needed a different approach. I needed to be smarter. I needed to make him think he had won. I looked at the soot on my hands. I looked like a man who had been through a disaster. A plan began to form in my mind. It was risky. It was dangerous. But it was the only way to get close enough to strike the fatal blow. He wanted a weak old man. He wanted a victim. Fine. I would give him a victim. I picked up my phone. It was covered in dust. I wiped the screen. I didn't dial 911. I dialed Solomon. He picked up on the second ring, his voice groggy with sleep. "Moses, it is 2 a.m. What happened?" "They threw a firebomb through my window, Solomon," I said, my voice calm and devoid of emotion. "Oh my God," Solomon gasped. "Are you hurt? Did you call the fire department?" "I put it out," I said. "The house is a mess, but I am fine." "Moses, we have to call the police. This is attempted murder. No police, Solomon. Not yet." "Why?" "Moses, listen to me. This man is dangerous." "I know he is dangerous, Solomon. That is why we have to end this. If we call the police, he will lawyer up. He will hide behind his money and his connections, and he will take it out on Keisha. So what are we going to do? Solomon asked, his voice trembling. We are going to give him what he wants, I said. What? We are going to surrender Solomon. Or at least we are going to make him think we surrendered. I looked at the burnt brick on the floor. I need you to meet me at the hospital in the morning, I said. The hospital. Why? Are you hurt? No, I said, but I am going to be. I hung up the phone. I sat there in the cold wind, holding the shotgun, watching the sun slowly start to rise over the city. I didn't clean up the mess. I left the brick. I left the glass. I wanted to remember this scene. Brad Sterling had started a fire, but he forgot that steel is forged in fire. And I was about to show him just how hard I could be. The brick on my living room floor was cooling down, but my mind was heating up. I sat there in the darkness, listening to the sirens fade in the distance. I had put out the fire, but I knew another one was coming. A bigger one. Brad Sterling had escalated the war. He had moved from threats to violence. He had tried to burn me out of my own home. I picked up the phone and dialed Solomon again. It was 3 a.m. now. Solomon. I said, my voice raspy from the smoke. Change of plans. We are not filing the injunction. Not yet. Moses, are you insane? Solomon whispered, his voice thick with sleep and worry. He just tried to kill you. We need the police. We need a restraining order. A restraining order is just a piece of paper, Solomon, I said, looking at the shattered glass on my rug. Brad doesn't respect paper. He respects force. And right now he thinks he has the force. He thinks he scared me. I took a deep breath. The air still smelled of burnt gasoline. He is holding Keisha hostage, Solomon. Not physically, but psychologically. If I attack him legally now, he will destroy her. He will release those emails. He will ruin her life just to spite me. I can't let that happen. I have to get her out of the line of fire before I drop the hammer. So, what do you want to do? Solomon asked. I want to surrender, I said. There was a long silence on the line. Surrender. Moses Carter never surrenders. I want him to think he broke me, I explained. I want him to think the fire worked. I want him to believe that I am just a scared old man who is ready to sign anything to stay alive. How are you going to do that? I am going to have a stroke, I said. What? Not a real one, Solomon, a performance. I am going to the hospital. I am going to check myself in. I will tell them I am having chest pains. I will tell them I am confused. I will play the part he wrote for me. The senile old man. The weak link. And then Solomon asked, catching on. And then you call him, I said. You call him and tell him to come to the hospital. Tell him I am asking for him. Tell him I am ready to sign. Moses, this is dangerous. If you go into the system acting sick, it is a Trojan horse, Solomon, I cut him off. I am wheeling myself into his camp. I need him to feel safe. I need him to feel like he won. Because when a man thinks he has won, he gets careless. He drops his guard. And that is when I will strike. I hung up the phone. I stood up and brushed the soot off my pants. I didn't clean up the living room. I left the brick. I left the burnt rug. I wanted him to see it. I wanted him to see the evidence of his victory. I drove myself to St. Luke's Hospital. I didn't take the truck. I called a taxi. I wanted to look helpless. When I walked into the emergency room, I let my shoulders slump. I let my hands shake. I told the nurse I couldn't breathe. I told her the world was spinning. They rushed me back. They hooked me up to monitors. They poked me with needles. I lay there in that flimsy hospital gown feeling naked and vulnerable. But my mind was sharp. I watched the heart monitor. Beep, beep, beep. It was steady. Too steady. I thought about the fire. I thought about Brad threatening Keisha. My heart rate spiked. The machine started beeping faster. See, I told the nurse. I am scared. By sunrise, I was in a private room on the 4th floor. Solomon was sitting in the chair by the window looking grim. He played his part well. He looked like a lawyer who had just lost his biggest client. They are here, Solomon whispered, looking out into the hallway. I closed my eyes. I made my breathing shallow. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I transformed from Moses the mechanic into Moses the victim. The door flew open. Oh my God, Moses. It was Brad. He rushed into the room, bringing with him a wave of expensive cologne and fake concern. He was wearing a fresh suit, perfect hair, not a strand out of place. He looked like the grieving son-in-law of the year. He ran to the side of the bed and grabbed my hand. His grip was clammy. Daddy. That was Keisha. She stood in the doorway, holding her purse with both hands. She looked terrible. Her eyes were swollen. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the floor. She couldn't bear to see what her husband had done. I opened my eyes slowly. I looked at Brad. I let a flicker of fear cross my face. Brad. I whispered, my voice barely a scratch in my throat. I am here, Moses, Brad said, squeezing my hand. I am right here. The doctor said you had a TIA, a mini stroke. It was the stress, wasn't it? He looked at the doctor who had followed them in. I told you, Brad said to the doctor, his voice taking on that authoritative tone he loved. I told you he has been under a lot of pressure. He has been confused lately, wandering, paranoia, and now this. He turned back to me, his eyes gleaming with a predatory light. Someone threw a brick through your window, Moses. That is what the police said. Who would do such a thing? It is a dangerous neighborhood. I told you it wasn't safe there anymore. He was gloating. He was telling me to my face I did this, and look where it got you. I tried to sit up, but I let myself fall back against the pillows. I let out a low moan. I am scared, Brad, I whispered. The fire. It was so hot. I know, Brad soothed, petting my hand like I was a dog. But you are safe now. We are here. We are going to take care of you. He looked at Solomon. Mr. Solomon, surely you can see that my father-in-law is in no condition to manage his affairs anymore. This incident proves it. He is vulnerable. He needs protection. Solomon looked at me, then looked at Brad. He stood up slowly. Mr. Carter asked me to call you. Solomon said, his voice stiff. He has come to a decision. Brad's head snapped back to me. His eyes widened. This was it. The moment he had committed arson for. Moses, he asked softly, leaning in close so only I could hear. What decision? I looked at him. I looked at the man who had threatened my daughter. I looked at the man who had tried to burn my history. And I decided to give him exactly what he wanted. I am tired, Brad, I said. I let a tear leak out of the corner of my eye. I am too old for this fight. I don't want to burn. No, of course not, Brad said, hiding his smile. The garage. I continued, my voice breaking. It is too much. You were right. It is a burden. Brad nodded vigorously. It is, Moses. It is a heavy burden. But I can carry it for you. I coughed. A dry, racking cough that shook the bed. Take it, I whispered. Take it all. I just want to rest. I want to go to the home, the nice one you talked about, with the garden. Brad looked like he had just won the lottery. He looked at Keisha. Did you hear that, honey? Brad said. Your father is being sensible. He wants us to help him. Keisha made a choking sound. She covered her mouth with her hand and turned away. She knew. She knew he had broken me, or so she thought. I reached out and grabbed Brad's lapel. I pulled him down. Friday, I rasped. What? Brad asked. Friday, I repeated. Bring the papers on Friday, the deed, the power of attorney. Bring them here. I will sign them. Friday, Brad said, checking his watch. That is 2 days from now. Why not today, Moses? I can have them here in an hour. No, I said, closing my eyes. I need to rest. My head hurts. The doctor said I need quiet. Friday. Come back Friday. I felt Brad hesitate. He was greedy. He wanted it now. But he also saw a broken old man in a hospital bed. He saw a man who had been terrified into submission. He figured I wasn't going anywhere. Okay, he said, smoothing my blanket. Okay, Moses. Friday morning, we will bring the notary. We will get everything settled. And then we will get you into that nice facility. You won't have to worry about anything ever again. He patted my shoulder. It felt like a branding iron. He stood up and walked over to Keisha. He put his arm around her shoulders. She flinched, but he held her tight. A display of ownership. Say goodbye to your father, Keisha, he said. He needs to sleep. Keisha walked to the bed. She leaned down to kiss my cheek. Her tears were hot on my skin. I am sorry, Daddy, she whispered so softly I almost missed it. I am so sorry. I opened my eyes and looked at her. I couldn't tell her the plan. Not yet. She was too fragile. Brad would read it on her face. It is okay, baby girl, I said. You just listen to Brad. Everything is going to be fine. She nodded, sniffing, and walked back to her husband. We will see you Friday, Moses Brad said from the doorway. Get some rest. You have a big day ahead of you. They left. The room was silent again. The heart monitor beeped its steady rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. Solomon walked over to the door and closed it. He turned back to me. He bought it, Solomon said. Hook, line, and sinker, I said, sitting up and ripping the oxygen tube off my nose. He thinks the war is over. It is risky, Moses Solomon said, sitting on the edge of the bed. You gave him a date. Friday. That is the same day his contract with the developer expires. He is going to be desperate to get that signature by noon. I know, I said, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. I want him desperate. I want him focused on Friday. I want him counting the hours. Because while he is counting hours, I am going to be counting his sins. I stood up. My hospital gown was thin, but I felt like I was wearing armor. Solomon, I said, I need you to do something for me. Anything, Moses. I need you to find out about his insurance, I said. Insurance? What kind of insurance? Life insurance, I said. Brad is a man who hedges his bets. If he thinks he might lose the land, he might have a backup plan. And I have a bad feeling that backup plan involves my daughter. Solomon's face went pale. You don't think... I think a man who throws a Molotov cocktail into a house isn't worried about collateral damage, I said, walking to the window. I need to know what Keisha is worth to him dead, because right now she is the only loose end he has. I looked out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Brad was celebrating. He was probably calling his developer, telling him the deal was done. He was probably toasting to his own brilliance. Enjoy it, son, I whispered. Enjoy the victory lap, because you are running on a track that ends at a cliff. Get me my clothes, Solomon, I said, turning back to the room. I have work to do, and I can't do it in a gown that shows my ass. We have 48 hours until Friday. Let's make them count. The hospital room was quiet, but the silence was a lie. I lay in the bed with my eyes closed, listening to the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. It was a soothing sound for the nurses, but for me it was a metronome counting down the time I had left to save my family. My body was still aching from the charade I was playing. My arm was sore from the IV drip. But my mind was running at red line. I heard the door creak open. It wasn't a nurse. The footsteps were too heavy. They were the confident strides of a man who thinks he owns the floor he walks on. It was Brad. He had come back. I kept my breathing shallow. I let my mouth hang open just a little, the way I had seen the old men do in the nursing homes back when I visited my mother. I was playing the part of the vegetable, the husk, and Brad bought it. He didn't come to the bedside to hold my hand this time. He walked straight to the window. I heard the rustle of his suit jacket as he pulled out his phone. He didn't even bother to whisper. He thought I was too far gone to understand. He thought I was just furniture. Yeah, it is done, he said into the phone. His voice was dripping with arrogance. The old man folded. I told you he would. He had a stroke or something close to it. He is weak. He is ready to sign. I lay there gripping the sheets under the blanket. I imagined wrapping those sheets around his throat. Friday morning, Brad continued. Yes, I will have the deed in hand by noon. Have the wire ready. 12 million. Don't play games with me, Tony. I want the transfer hitting my offshore account the second the ink is dry. Offshore account. So he wasn't just paying debts. He was planning an exit strategy. He laughed then. It was a cold, ugly sound. Don't worry about the wife, he said. Keisha is handled. She is a mess. She thinks this is all to pay for her father's care. She has no idea. Once the deal is closed, she is, well, let's just say she won't be a problem anymore. My heart rate spiked. The monitor beeped faster. Beep, beep, beep. Brad paused. He looked over at me. I forced my body to relax. I let out a low moan and shifted my leg. He is fine, Brad said into the phone dismissively. Just a dream. Look, I have to go. I have a dinner reservation. I am celebrating. See you Friday. He hung up. I heard him walk to the door. Sleep tight, Moses, he whispered. The door clicked shut. I opened my eyes. The rage in my chest was so hot, I thought it would set the hospital gown on fire. He wasn't just stealing the land. He was discarding my daughter. She won't be a problem anymore. What did that mean? I needed answers, and I couldn't get them from a hospital bed. I sat up and ripped the tape off my arm. I checked the time. 2:00 p.m. Visiting hours were in full swing. I picked up my phone from the bedside table. I sent a text to the one man I knew could find dirt in a desert. Ray, room 404. Come in the back way. Ray was a man I had known since high school. He used to be a detective for the NYPD until he got tired of the red tape and opened his own private investigation firm. He was rough, he was cynical, and he was expensive. But for me, he worked for the price of a good bottle of bourbon and the loyalty of 40 years. 20 minutes later, the door opened again. It wasn't Brad. It was Ray. He looked like a fire hydrant in a trench coat, short, wide, and immovable. He was holding a bouquet of cheap flowers as a cover, but his eyes were scanning the room for bugs. "You look like hell, Moses," Ray grunted, tossing the flowers on the chair. "I feel like hell, Ray," I said, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. "Did you get it?" Ray pulled a thick manila envelope from inside his coat. He didn't hand it to me immediately. He held it in his thick hands and looked at me with a grim expression. "You are not going to like this, Moses," he said. "I have seen some bad stuff in my time. I have seen husbands cheat. I have seen partners embezzle. But this is cold. Give it to me, Ray." He handed me the envelope. I opened it. Inside were bank records, credit reports, and a stack of emails. I started with the financials. It was a bloodbath. Brad Sterling wasn't just broke. He was underwater. He owed $4 million to a shell company in the Cayman Islands that Ray had traced back to an Eastern European syndicate. He owed $2 million to the IRS. He had leveraged the house, the cars, and even his own watch. "He is bleeding out," Ray said, pointing to a spreadsheet. "He is paying $50,000 a month just in interest. He needs that land sale not to get rich but to stay alive. If he doesn't pay them by the end of the month, they are going to break his legs." I nodded. This confirmed what I suspected. The firebomb was a message from his creditors, but that wasn't what Ray was worried about. "Turn to the last section," Ray said quietly. "The insurance." I flipped the pages. I saw a policy document from Mutual Life. It was a term life insurance policy. Insured Keisha Sterling. Beneficiary Bradley Sterling. Policy amount $5 million. I looked at the date. August 15th. 3 months ago. And there was a rider attached, a double indemnity clause. In the event of accidental death, the payout increases to $10 million. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands started to shake, and this time it wasn't an act. "He bet against her," I whispered. "He didn't just bet against her," Moses Ray said. "He is planning to cash in. Look at the timeline. He buys the policy in August. In September, he signs the option to sell your land. In October, he starts pressuring you to sign the deed." Ray leaned in close, his voice dropping to a growl. "Here is the play, Moses. He gets the land on Friday. He sells it for $12 million. That pays off the mob and the IRS. He is clean, but he is broke. He has $0 left. He is back to square one." Ray tapped the insurance paper. "But if Keisha has an accident, say a car crash, or a fall down the stairs, or a fire, he gets $10 million tax-free. He gets to start over, new life, new money, no wife who knows his secrets." I stared at the paper. The words swam before my eyes. Accidental death. The fire at my house wasn't just a warning for me. It was a rehearsal. He wasn't trying to kill me with the brick. He was trying to scare me into signing. But for Keisha, the fire would be real. I thought about the way he treated her at the dinner, the way he threatened her with prison. He had isolated her. He had terrified her. He had made her feel like he was the only person in the world she could trust. He was fattening the lamb for the slaughter. I stood up. I paced the small hospital room, dragging the IV pole with me. "I have to kill him," I said. It wasn't a figure of speech. In that moment, I felt the cold logic of a father. If I kill him, she lives. "Moses, stop," Ray said, stepping in front of me. "You are not a killer. You are a mechanic. You fix things. If you kill him, you go to jail, and Keisha is left alone with his debts and his enemies. Then what do I do, Ray? He is going to murder my daughter." Ray pointed to the papers. "We use his greed against him. We know his timeline. Friday. He needs the land first. He won't touch Keisha until he has the deed and the money from the sale. He needs to be clear of the debt before he makes his move on the insurance. So as long as he thinks the deal is happening, Keisha is safe," I reasoned. "Exactly. He needs her alive to keep you compliant. She is his leverage." I looked at the date on the calendar on the wall. Wednesday. 2 days. "I have to get her out of that house," I said. "You can't," Ray argued. "If you pull her out now, he panics. If he panics, he might accelerate the timeline. He might decide $5 million from the insurance is better than nothing and cut his losses. You have to play this out, Moses. You have to let him think he is winning until the very last second. I looked at the photo of Keisha on my phone lock screen. She was smiling, holding a diploma. She looked so happy, so full of life, and her husband had put a price tag on her head. $10 million. He thinks I am a vegetable, I said, looking at Ray. He thinks I am a stroke victim who is going to hand him the keys to the kingdom. Ray nodded. That is your advantage. He doesn't see you. He sees a signature. I walked back to the bed and sat down. I put the papers back in the envelope. Ray, I said, I need you to do one more thing for me. Name it. I need you to find out where he is meeting the developer on Friday, after he leaves the hospital. He is going to go straight to the closing. I need to know where that is. Ray pulled out a small notepad. I already checked. Apex Development has a satellite office downtown, but Brad isn't meeting them there. He is meeting them at the bank. First National on Main Street. He needs to pay off the foreclosure immediately. First National, I repeated. That is public. That is good. I looked at the insurance policy one last time. He wants an accident, I whispered. I looked at Ray. I am going to give him an accident, but it won't be the kind he pays for. It is going to be the kind he pays for with his life. I laid back on the pillows. I closed my eyes. Ray left quietly, taking the flowers, but leaving the envelope hidden under my mattress. I lay there alone in the room. The sun was setting, turning the walls gray. I wasn't Moses the mechanic anymore. I wasn't Moses the father. I was a guardian. Brad Sterling had made a fatal error. He thought the land was the prize. He thought the money was the goal. He didn't realize that by threatening my daughter, he had unlocked a part of me that I had kept buried since Vietnam. I touched the envelope under the mattress. It felt hot, like it was burning. You want a tragedy, Brad? I whispered to the empty room. You are going to get one. But the body they carry out won't be hers. I waited for the night to come. I had to rest. I had to be strong. Because on Friday, I wasn't just signing a deed. I was signing his death warrant. The fluorescent lights of the hospital room hummed with a low, annoying buzz that sounded like a trapped fly. It was Thursday night, the eve of the battle. The air in the room felt heavy, not with sickness, but with the weight of the conspiracy we were about to execute. I sat on the edge of the bed, fully dressed in my street clothes, having ditched the humiliating hospital gown hours ago. Across from me, sitting in the plastic visitor chair, was Solomon. He looked tired. His tie was loosened and his gray hair was a mess, but his eyes were bright. He held a thick leather briefcase on his lap, the kind of briefcase that has seen 1,000 courtrooms and held 1,000,000 secrets. He popped the latches. The sound was sharp and final, like the racking of a shotgun slide. Is it done? I asked, my voice low. Solomon reached into the case and pulled out 2 stacks of paper. He laid them on the rolling tray table between us. It is done, he said. He tapped the stack on the left. This is the bait. This is the quitclaim deed exactly as Brad drafted it. I matched the font. I matched the margins. I even found the same heavy bond paper he uses. To the naked eye, and even to a trained eye in a hurry, this looks like the unconditional surrender of Carter's garage to Bradley and Keisha Sterling. I looked at the stack. It looked innocent enough, just paper and ink, but it was the key to a $12 million fraud. And the other one, I asked, pointing to the stack on the right. Solomon smiled. It was the smile of a chess grandmaster who has just moved his rook into position for a mate in 3. This, he said, is the trap. He opened the folder. Yesterday, while you were playing the part of the dying invalid, I went to the county recorder's office. I met with the registrar. We filed a new deed, Moses. He turned the document around so I could read it. The Carter Historical Preservation Trust. I ran my finger over the seal. It was embossed. It was real. It was permanent. Explain it to me one more time, Solomon, I said. I need to know exactly what I am signing away. I need to know that there is no going back. Solomon took a deep breath. Okay, Moses, here is the mechanics of it. As of 4:00 p.m. yesterday, you are no longer the sole owner of the land. You transferred the development rights of the property to a non-profit trust dedicated to the preservation of African American industrial history in the city. He flipped the page. We filed a restrictive covenant on the deed. This is the poison pill. This covenant states that the land and the original structure of Carter's garage are protected historical landmarks. They cannot be demolished. They cannot be altered for commercial use. They cannot be turned into condos or office towers. They must remain a garage or a museum or a community center in perpetuity. In perpetuity, I whispered. Forever. Forever, Solomon confirmed. The land is effectively worthless to a developer. Apex Development can't build their tech hub because they can't tear down the garage. The moment they run a title search, they will see this restriction. But Brad hasn't run a title search lately, I said. Exactly, Solomon said. Brad ran his title search 2 months ago when he signed the option contract. He thinks the title is clear. He thinks he is getting a blank slate. He doesn't know that in the last 24 hours, the ground has shifted beneath his feet. I looked at the papers. I felt a strange mix of sorrow and relief. I was giving it away. My legacy. My $15 million lottery ticket. I was taking it out of my pocket and throwing it into the river so that the man holding a knife to my throat couldn't have it. So when I signed the deed to Brad tomorrow, I asked, what exactly am I giving him? Solomon chuckled darkly. You are giving him a box with a bomb inside. You are transferring the ownership of the land to him, yes. But the restriction travels with the land. He takes the title, but he also takes the handcuffs. He will own the garage, but he won't be able to sell it to Apex. Apex will pull their money the second they find out. They will sue him for breach of contract. They will demand their $5 million deposit back. And he doesn't have it, I said. Dies. No, he doesn't. He spent it. And when he can't pay them back, then the sharks come for him. I finished the thought. I leaned back in the chair. It was brutal. It was efficient. It was the kind of plan that leaves no prisoners. But there is a risk, Moses Solomon said, his face turning serious again. A big one. Tell me, timing, Solomon said. We need him to sign the sale papers with Apex before he realizes the land is restricted. We need him to commit the fraud. If he finds out about the trust before he closes the deal with Apex, he might walk away. He might run. And if he runs, he takes Keisha with him. I thought about the insurance policy, the $10 million bounty on my daughter's head. He won't run, I said. He is too greedy, and he is too desperate. He has the mob breathing down his neck. He needs that $12 million by noon tomorrow, or he is a dead man. He won't check the title again. He is arrogant. He thinks he already won. I picked up the fake deed, the bait. Tomorrow morning, I said, he comes in here. I sign this. He thinks he owns me. He runs to the bank to meet Apex. He hands them this title. They wire him the money. And then Solomon interjected, the title company runs the final check. It usually takes an hour or two. That is the window. That is the kill zone. And in that window, I said I need to get Keisha safe. Solomon nodded. I have a team ready, private security, former cops. As soon as Brad leaves this hospital room, they will be on Keisha. They are watching the house right now, but we can't move her until Brad is at the bank. We need him distracted. I looked at my hands. They were calloused, scarred from 50 years of turning wrenches. These hands built that garage. And now these hands were going to sign it away to save the only thing I loved more than the work. I am essentially disinheriting her, Solomon, I said quietly. Keisha. If I do this, the land is gone. The money is gone. She gets nothing. Solomon reached out and touched my arm. You are saving her life, Moses. You are buying her freedom. A legacy isn't worth a dime if you are dead. Besides, you retain the honorary management rights. You can still run the shop. You can still teach kids. You just can't sell it. I smiled. A mechanic who can't sell his shop is just a mechanic who has to keep working. I was okay with that. I picked up the pen. I tested the weight of it. Does the trust have a name, I asked. The Ruth and Moses Carter Foundation, Solomon said. I felt a lump in my throat. Ruth. She would have hated the drama, but she would have loved the justice. It is perfect, Solomon, I said. I looked at the clock on the wall. 9 p.m. Brad would be here in 12 hours. He would bring his notary. He would bring his smug smile. He would think he was taking advantage of a senile old man. He didn't know that the senile old man had just pulled the pin on the grenade and handed it to him. You should go home, Solomon, I said. Get some sleep. You need to look sharp tomorrow. I need you here to witness the signature. I need you to play the defeated lawyer. I can do that, Solomon said, standing up and packing the papers back into the briefcase. I will leave the copy of the bait here. Put it on the table. Make it look like you have been reading it, like you are resigned to your fate. I took the fake deed and placed it on the bedside table next to the pitcher of water. It looked innocent. It looked like surrender. Solomon walked to the door. He paused and looked back at me. Moses, are you sure you can do this? When he walks in here, he is going to gloat. He is going to be unbearable. If you crack, I won't crack, I said. My engine runs cold, Solomon. He nodded and slipped out into the hallway. I was alone again. I turned off the lights and lay back in the bed. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I lay there in the dark, rehearsing the scene in my head. I visualized Brad's face. I visualized the pen. I visualized the signature. I thought about the fire in my living room, the brick on the rug. I thought about Keisha's terrified eyes. Brad Sterling wanted to play a high-stakes game. He wanted to gamble with human lives. Well, I was about to call his bluff. I closed my eyes and whispered into the dark. Come on, Brad. Come and get it. The trap is set. The cheese is on the trigger. All you have to do is take a bite. Friday morning arrived with a blinding white sun that cut through the hospital blinds like a laser. It was the kind of light that exposes every dust mote in the air and every line on an old man's face. I lay in the bed, propped up by 3 pillows, staring at the clock on the wall. The second hand swept around the dial with a mechanical indifference. Tick, tick, tick. It was 9:45. Brad Sterling's deadline was noon. He would be here any minute. I looked over at Solomon. He was sitting in the corner chair, his briefcase on his lap. He looked like he had aged 10 years and 2 days. His suit was rumpled, his tie was askew, and he was staring at the floor with the dejected posture of a lawyer who knows he has lost the case of his life. It was a brilliant performance. If I didn't know better, I would have believed he was defeated too. They are coming, Solomon whispered without looking up. I heard the footsteps in the hallway. They weren't the soft squeak of nurses' shoes. They were the hard, confident clack of expensive leather on linoleum. A marching beat. I let my head loll to the side. I made my eyes unfocused. I relaxed the muscles in my face until I felt the slackness of age take over. I wasn't Moses Carter the mechanic anymore. I was Moses Carter the victim. The door swung open. Brad walked in first. He looked electric. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my truck. His hair was slicked back and his face was shaved so close it looked polished. He radiated an energy that was half panic and half triumph. He was running on adrenaline and greed. Behind him came a short, nervous man clutching a notary seal in a leather folio. The notary, a hired gun paid to stamp a lie and call it truth, and behind them, trailing like a ghost, was Keisha. My breath hitched in my chest. She looked terrible. She was wearing a high-necked dress and sunglasses even though she was indoors. When she took the glasses off, I saw why. Her eyes were swollen almost shut. There were dark circles under them that makeup couldn't hide. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. She stood by the door hugging herself, her shoulders hunched as if expecting a blow. Brad didn't look at her. He walked straight to the bed, his smile wide and terrifying. "Good morning, Moses," he boomed, his voice too loud for the small room. "You look rested. You look much better today." I blinked slowly, trying to focus on him. "Brad," I rasped. "Is it Friday?" "It is Friday," Brad said, patting my leg through the blanket. "It is the big day. I brought everyone just like you asked. This is Mr. Henderson. He is a notary public. He is going to help us make everything official." Mr. Henderson gave a small, nervous wave. He wouldn't look me in the eye. "And look who else is here," Brad said, gesturing to the door. "Keisha came to see you." Keisha stepped forward. She walked like she was moving through water. She came to the side of the bed and took my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. "Hi, Daddy," she whispered. Her voice was cracked and dry. I squeezed her hand just a little. Not enough to break character, but enough to tell her I was still there. "Baby girl," I mumbled. "You look tired." "I am okay, Daddy," she lied. "I am just worried about you." "We are all worried about him," Brad interrupted, stepping between us and effectively pushing her away. "That is why we are doing this, to make sure he gets the care he needs." "Right, Moses." He didn't wait for an answer. He snapped his fingers at the notary. "Let's get set up. We are on a tight schedule. I have a meeting at the bank at 11. The notary scrambled to set up a small portable table over my bed. He laid out the documents. The quitclaim deed, the power of attorney, the transfer of assets. It was a stack of paper thick enough to choke a horse. Solomon stood up then. He walked over to the bed, his movement slow and heavy. "I must object one last time," he said, his voice shaking. "Mr. Sterling, this is highly irregular. My client is in a fragile state. He has not had time to review these specific drafts." Brad spun around, his eyes narrowing. Your client asked for this, Mr. Solomon. He called me. He begged me to come. Isn't that right, Moses? He leaned over me, his face inches from mine. Tell your lawyer, Moses. Tell him this is what you want. I looked at Solomon. I saw the pain in his eyes. He hated this. He hated seeing me like this, even if it was a ruse. It is okay, Solomon, I whispered. I just want it to be over. Brad smirked. See, he is lucid. He knows exactly what he is doing. Now step back, Mr. Solomon. You are just a witness today. Solomon sighed and stepped back, retreating to his corner. Brad pulled a heavy gold fountain pen from his pocket, the same one I had knocked out of his hand 2 nights ago. He uncapped it and placed it in my trembling hand. Okay, Moses, Brad said, pointing to the line at the bottom of the first page. Just sign right here, next to the X. I held the pen. My hand shook violently. The tip of the pen hovered over the paper. I looked at the document. Quitclaim deed. Grantor Ezekiel Moses Carter. I knew what this paper was. It was a lie. It was a decoy. The real deed, the one that mattered, was already safely locked away in the county archives under the name of the trust. But Brad didn't know that. He thought this piece of paper was his ticket to $12 million. I hesitated. I let the pen drift. Brad's patience snapped. Brad's patience. He leaned down close to my ear. His voice dropped to a whisper, a hiss that only I could hear. Sign it, old man, he breathed. Sign it or I make the call. The DEA is on speed dial. Do you want to see Keisha in handcuffs before lunch? I looked up at him. I let him see the fear in my eyes, the fear he wanted to see. And then he added the sweetener, the lie he told himself to feel like a good man. You are doing the right thing, Moses. Once this is done, I am putting you in Golden Meadows, the best facility in the state. They have a great dementia unit, locked doors, padded walls. You will be safe there. You will never have to worry about anything again, and neither will we. Golden Meadows. He wasn't planning to put me in a home. He was planning to put me in a warehouse for the dying. He was planning to lock me away and throw away the key. I looked past him at Keisha. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face, ruining her dress. She thought I was signing away my life to save hers. And in a way I was. I took a deep breath. I gripped the pen. I pressed the nib to the paper. I wrote my name, Ezekiel Moses Carter. The ink was black and permanent. The signature was shaky, looking exactly like the scrawl of a man who has lost his grip on the world. Good, Brad whispered. Very good. Now the next one. I signed the power of attorney. I signed the transfer of the bank accounts. I signed the release of the safety deposit box. With every signature, Brad's eyes got wider. They glowed with a manic light. He was doing the math in his head. 12 million minus the debt, minus the payoffs, leaving him with enough. Enough to survive, enough to kill my daughter for the insurance money later. Done, I whispered, dropping the pen. Brad snatched the papers up before the ink was even dry. He handed them to the notary, who stamped them with a furious efficiency. Ka-thunk, ka-thunk. The sound echoed like gunshots. Perfect, Brad said, gathering the documents into a leather folder. Absolutely perfect. He checked his Rolex. 10:30. We are ahead of schedule, he said. He turned to the notary. Go file these immediately. I want the electronic confirmation by the time I get to the bank. The notary ran out of the room. Brad turned to me. He didn't say thank you. He didn't ask how I felt. He looked at me like I was a wrapper he had just peeled off a candy bar. You rest now, Moses, he said, slipping the folder under his arm. The nurse will come in later to check on you. I have to go handle the transition. He turned to Keisha. Come on, he barked. Keisha didn't move. She was looking at me. I want to stay, she said, her voice trembling. I want to stay with Daddy. Brad's face hardened. No, he said. You are coming with me. We have a celebration lunch with the partners. You need to be there. You need to look happy. But Brad... Now Keisha. Brad snapped. Don't make a scene. Not today. He grabbed her arm. His fingers dug into her flesh. Keisha looked at me one last time. Her eyes were begging for forgiveness. Go, baby girl, I whispered. It is okay. Go with him. She let him pull her toward the door. Brad stopped at the threshold. He looked back at me and Solomon. He smiled. It was the smile of a man who thinks he has gotten away with murder. "You know, Moses," he said, "you were right about one thing. The garage really was a burden. I am glad I could take it off your hands." He laughed and walked out, dragging my daughter behind him. The door clicked shut. The room was silent. I lay there for 10 seconds, counting. 1, 2, 3. I heard the elevator ding down the hall. I heard the doors slide open and close. They were gone. I sat up. I ripped the IV tape off my hand, wincing as it pulled the hair. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. I stood up. I wasn't shaking anymore. My back was straight. My eyes were clear. Solomon stood up too. He wasn't the defeated lawyer anymore. He was the shark. "He took the bait," Solomon said, checking his phone. "The notary just texted me. He is filing the deed now." "Good," I said, walking to the closet where my clothes were hanging. "That means the clock is ticking." "How long do we have?" Solomon asked. "He is going to First National Bank," I said, buttoning my shirt. "He is meeting Apex there at 11. The notary will file the deed by 10:45. The title company will run the final check at 11:15. "So we have 45 minutes, Solomon said. 45 minutes until he walks into that bank and tries to sell a national monument," I said, pulling on my jacket. I checked my pocket. The recorder was there. The phone was there. "Solomon," I said, "call the security team. Where is Keisha?" Solomon tapped his earpiece. "My guys are in the parking lot," he said. "They saw them get into the Porsche. Brad is driving fast. He is heading downtown." "Is there a tail?" I asked. "2 cars, Solomon said. "They won't lose him." "Good." I put on my hat. It was my old fedora, the one I wore to church. "Where are you going?" Moses Solomon asked. "You are supposed to stay here. You are supposed to be sick." "I am done being sick, Solomon," I said, walking to the door. "I am going to the bank." "But Moses, if he sees you." "I want him to see me," I said. "I want to be there when the card declines. I want to be there when the title search comes back red. I want to look him in the eye when he realizes that the land he just stole is worthless dirt." "And Keisha?" Solomon asked. "I am going to get my daughter," I said. I opened the door. The hospital hallway was bright and busy. Nurses were rushing by. Doctors were paging. Life was going on. But for Brad Sterling, time had just run out. "Let's go, Solomon," I said. I don't want to miss the look on his face when the check bounces. The heavy door of the hospital room clicked shut, and the sound echoed like a gunshot in a canyon. Brad was gone. He had marched out of there with the stride of a conqueror, clutching that leather folder as if it contained the Holy Grail. He was in such a rush to get to the bank to get his hands on the $12 million he thought he had won that he made a mistake, a critical, arrogant mistake. He left Keisha behind. At the last second, right by the elevator, he had looked at her. He saw her red eyes, her running mascara, her trembling hands. He realized she looked like a wreck. He couldn't walk into a high-stakes closing with a weeping wife. It would look bad. It would raise questions. So he shoved her back toward the room. "Stay here," he had snapped. "Make sure the old man doesn't die before the wire hits the account. I will pick you up when I am rich." So there, she was standing by the door, her back pressed against the wood, staring at me with a look of absolute devastation. She thought I was a senile old man who had just signed away his legacy. She thought she had failed to protect me. She was sobbing quietly, her shoulders shaking, trying to stifle the sound so she wouldn't wake me. I lay there for a moment listening to her cry. It broke my heart, but it also fueled my anger. I waited until I was sure Brad was in the elevator. I waited until I knew he was walking to his Porsche, his mind already spending money he didn't have. Then I moved. I sat up. I didn't struggle. I didn't groan. I sat up with the fluid motion of a man who does 50 push-ups every morning. I reached over and ripped the tape off my arm, pulling the fake IV line out from under the mattress where I had tucked it. "Keisha," I said. My voice wasn't raspy anymore. It was deep and clear. The voice she remembered from her childhood. She froze. She stopped crying and stared at me, her eyes wide with shock. "Daddy," she whispered. "Lock the door, baby girl," I said, pointing to the deadbolt. "Do it now." She didn't ask questions. The command in my voice triggered a reflex. She turned and twisted the lock. Click. "Come here," I said, patting the edge of the bed. "Sit down. We need to talk." She walked over slowly as if she were approaching a ghost. She sat down on the edge of the mattress. She reached out and touched my face. You are okay," she stammered. "You didn't have a stroke." I took her hand. It was cold and clammy. "I am fine, Keisha. I am better than fine. I am awake. And I have been awake the whole time. But—" The papers, she gasped, looking at the empty table where the notary had stamped the documents. "You signed them. You gave him the garage. You gave him everything." I smiled a grim, tight smile. I gave him paper, Keisha. I gave him a stack of meaningless paper that Solomon printed out yesterday. The real deed, the real ownership of the garage is locked away in a trust that Brad can't touch. He is driving to the bank right now to sell a building he doesn't own. Keisha's mouth fell open. She looked at me with a mixture of confusion and dawning hope. You tricked him." "I trapped him," I corrected. "I trapped him because I needed to get him out of this room. I needed to get him away from you so I could ask you the question that has been burning a hole in my gut for 3 days. I leaned in close, looking deep into her eyes. I saw the fear there. I saw the shadow of the man she married. "Keisha," I said softly, "why did you stay?" She looked away, biting her lip. "I saw the foreclosure notice, Keisha. I know about the money. I know about the debt. But debt isn't enough to make a woman like you betray her father. Debt isn't enough to make you look this scared." I reached up and gently touched the side of her face. She flinched. It was a tiny, involuntary movement, but I felt it. "He hit you, didn't he?" I asked. She crumbled. It wasn't a slow breakdown. It was a collapse. She buried her face in my chest and wailed. It was the sound of 5 years of silence finally breaking. "He didn't mean to," she sobbed, her voice muffled against my shirt. "He was just so stressed. The money, the people calling, he grabbed me. He threw me against the wall. He said it was my fault. He said I spent too much. He said I was dragging him down. I held her. I stroked her hair just like I did when she was 6 years old and scraped her knee. But this wasn't a scraped knee. This was a soul wound. And the pills I asked, the accusations about the pharmacy. Is that true?" She shook her head violently against my chest. "No, Daddy, no. I never took anything. He made it up. He accessed my inventory logs. He has a friend in IT. They altered the records. He showed me the fake logs. He said he would send them to the board if I tried to leave. He said I would go to prison for trafficking." I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. It was heavier than lead. Brad Sterling hadn't just been greedy. He had been meticulous. He had manufactured a cage for my daughter using her own career as the bars. "And there is something else," she whispered, pulling away and wiping her eyes. "Tell me," I said. "Tell me everything." She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so hard she almost dropped it. She opened the gallery and scrolled to a hidden folder. "He has photos," she said, her voice barely audible. "From college, my junior year. There was a party. I got drunk. Someone took pictures. I didn't know." She showed me the screen. I looked away quickly. I didn't want to see my daughter like that. I didn't need to see the details to understand the threat. "He found them on an old hard drive," she said. "He said he would post them. He said he would send them to my boss, to the church, to you. He said he would humiliate me so badly I wouldn't be able to walk down the street." I took the phone from her hand. I turned it off. "He is a monster," I said. "He owns me, Daddy," she cried. "He owns my debt. He owns my reputation. He owns my freedom. That is why I helped him. I was so scared. I didn't want you to lose the garage, but I didn't want to lose my life." I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked out at the parking lot. I imagined Brad's Porsche speeding down the highway, weaving through traffic, the engine roaring. He was feeling invincible right now. He was feeling like a god. "He doesn't own you, Keisha," I said, turning back to her. "He doesn't own anything. Not anymore." I walked over to the closet and pulled out my suit jacket. I put it on, adjusting the collar. I put on my hat. "Keisha, look at me." She looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "He is driving to a cliff," I said. "In about 30 minutes, he is going to walk into that bank and try to cash a check that is going to bounce so hard it will shatter his life. When that happens, he is going to lose his mind. The mob is waiting for him, the police are waiting for him, and I am waiting for him." I held out my hand. "You have a choice, baby girl. You can stay here and cry. You can wait for the fallout. Or you can stand up. You can wipe your face. And you can come with me to watch him fall." She looked at my hand. She looked at the man she thought was frail and dying. She saw the fire in my eyes. She saw the iron that had built a life out of scrap metal. But the photos, she whispered. The logs. Solomon has a team of digital forensics guys working on it right now. I lied. It wasn't a total lie. I knew Ray could scrub a hard drive cleaner than a hospital floor. We will find them. We will delete them. And as for the drugs, we will expose his tampering. I leaned down. He built a house of cards, Keisha. And I just kicked the table. She took a deep breath. She reached up and grabbed my hand. Her grip was weak at first, but then she squeezed. I felt her strength returning. I felt the daughter I raised coming back to the surface. I want to see him lose, she whispered. Then let's go, I said, pulling her up. We walked out of the hospital room. We didn't look back at the empty bed. The sick old man was gone. Moses Carter was back. We walked down the hallway past the nurse's station. Mr. Carter, a nurse called out, surprised. You shouldn't be up. You need to rest. I tipped my hat to her. I am feeling much better, ma'am, I said. It turns out the only medicine I needed was a little fresh air and a lot of justice. We got into the elevator. Solomon was waiting in the lobby with Ray. Ray looked at Keisha and nodded respectfully. The car is out front, Ray said. Brad just parked at the bank. He is walking in now. I looked at my watch. 10:55 a.m. Perfect timing, I said. We walked out into the bright sunlight. The city noise washed over us, horns honking, people shouting, life moving fast. Brad Sterling was about to have the worst day of his life. And for the first time in months, my daughter was smiling. It was a small, grim smile. But it was real. Get in the car, Keisha, I said, opening the door of Solomon's black sedan. We are going to the bank, and we are going to make a withdrawal. A withdrawal of his power, a withdrawal of his pride, and a withdrawal of his freedom. The engine roared to life. We pulled into traffic. The hunt was on. The boardroom on the 45th floor of the First National Bank building smelled of leather polish and old money. It was Monday morning. The weekend had passed a long, agonizing 48 hours where Brad Sterling had walked around like a king in waiting. He had spent the weekend toasting to his own brilliance, probably ordering expensive champagne and looking at real estate brochures for islands in the Caribbean. He thought the hard part was over. He thought the old man was broken, the wife was silenced, and the deed was done. But Monday morning is when the banks open. Monday morning is when the rubber meets the road. I wasn't in the room when the meeting started, but I can picture it as clearly as if I had built the table myself. Brad sat at the head of the conference table wearing his best power suit. Across from him sat the representatives of Apex Development. There was Tony, a man with cold eyes and a diamond pinky ring who represented the silent partners, the ones you don't want to owe money to. And there was Mr. Sterling, no relation, the lead attorney for the bank. Brad slid the folder across the mahogany table. It contained the deed I had signed on Friday, the deed he thought transferred my life's work into his pocket. There it is, gentlemen, Brad said, his voice smooth as silk. The deed to Carter's garage, signed, sealed, and notarized. The title is clear. The owner has vacated his rights. We are ready to break ground on the tech hub. Tony picked up the folder. He didn't smile. He flipped through the pages, checking the signatures. And the old man. Tony asked, his voice gravelly. He is not going to be a problem. He is in a nursing home. Brad lied. He is happy as a clam. He doesn't even know what year it is. Tony nodded. He signaled to the banker. Wire the funds. $12 million. Minus the $5 million deposit. Transfer $7 million to Mr. Sterling's account immediately. Brad leaned back in his chair, trying to look casual, but his heart must have been hammering against his ribs. This was it. The moment he escaped the debt. The moment he survived. The banker began to type on his laptop. Brad watched his fingers. Tap, tap, tap. And then the door burst open. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a frantic shove. A young man in a cheap suit ran into the room. He was sweating. He was holding a tablet and his face was the color of curdled milk. It was the junior associate from the title company, the guy responsible for doing the final check before the money moved. Stop the wire, he screamed. Do not send the money. The room froze. Brad stood up halfway. What is this? Brad barked. Who are you? Get out of here. We are closing. You can't close, the associate gasped, trying to catch his breath. You can't build. The deal is dead. Brad laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. What are you talking about? I have the deed right here. Look at it. The associate walked to the table and threw the tablet down. "We just ran the final title update," he said. "As of last Friday at 4:00 p.m., just before the courthouse closed, a new filing was recorded on the property." "What filing?" Brad demanded. "A restrictive covenant," the associate said. Brad frowned. "A covenant? What kind of covenant?" The associate looked at Tony, then at Brad. "A historical preservation covenant," he said. "The land known as Carter's Garage has been placed into the Carter Historical Preservation Trust. It has been designated a protected African American heritage site." The silence in the room was deafening. It was the sound of a bomb having gone off, but the shockwave hasn't hit yet. Brad blinked. "I don't understand. What does that mean?" "It means you can't tear it down," the associate said. "It means you can't build a tech hub. You can't build condos. You can't even change the signage without a board vote. The land is restricted for non-commercial use in perpetuity." "In perpetuity? Forever?" Brad's face went white. Not pale. White. Like the blood had simply evaporated from his body. "That is impossible," he stammered. "I have the deed. Moses signed the deed on Friday morning. I own the land." The associate shook his head. "You own the land, Mr. Sterling. That is true. But you also own the restriction. The trust was filed 24 hours before your deed was recorded. The restriction travels with the title. You bought a museum, Mr. Sterling, not a development site." Tony stood up slowly. His chair scraped against the floor with a screech that sounded like a knife on bone. "A museum," Tony repeated. He looked at Brad. His eyes were no longer cold. They were burning. "You sold us a museum, Brad." Brad backed away, holding his hands up. No, Tony. Listen. It is a mistake. The old man, he tricked me. He couldn't have done this. He is senile. He had a stroke. This is fraud. I will sue him. I will overturn it." "Overturn it?" The associate laughed darkly. "It is a state-recognized trust, Brad. It would take 10 years of litigation to even get a hearing. And even then the public outcry would be massive. Nobody is going to let you bulldoze a civil rights landmark." Tony didn't care about civil rights. He cared about his money. "My deposit." Tony said, his voice soft and terrifying. $5 million, Brad. Where is it?" Brad swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed. It is tied up." Brad lied. "In escrow." "I can get it back. Just give me a few days." Tony slammed his fist on the table. The heavy mahogany jumped. "Don't lie to me, Brad. I saw your credit report. I know you spent it. You spent it on your gambling debts. You spent it on your cars. You spent my money on a promise you couldn't keep." "I didn't know," Brad squealed, backing into the corner. "I swear, Tony. The old man, he set me up." Tony walked around the table. He didn't run. He stalked. "I don't care about the old man," Tony said. "I care about my $5 million. And if I don't see it in my account by the end of business today, Brad, well, let's just say the tech hub won't be the only thing getting demolished." The door opened again. This time it wasn't a panicked lawyer. It was me. I walked into the boardroom. I wasn't wearing a hospital gown. I was wearing my grease-stained work boots and my favorite flannel shirt. I looked like exactly what I was. A mechanic who had come to inspect the wreckage. Behind me was Keisha. She was wearing sunglasses, but her head was held high, and behind her was Solomon, looking like the cat who ate the canary. Brad saw me. His eyes bulged. "You," he screamed, pointing a trembling finger. "You did this, you senile old bastard. You tricked me." I walked over to the table. I picked up the tablet and looked at the digital deed. The Carter Historical Preservation Trust. "It looks legal to me, Brad," I said, my voice calm. "I told you I wanted to preserve my legacy. I just didn't tell you how." Brad lunged at me, but Tony grabbed him by the collar of his expensive suit and threw him back against the wall. "Sit down," Tony growled. Brad slid down the wall looking like a broken doll. He looked up at me, hatred and fear warring in his eyes. "Why," he whispered. "Why did you sign the deed if you knew it was worthless?" "I didn't sign it for the money, Brad," I said. "I signed it to show these gentlemen who you really are." I turned to Tony. "He sold you land he didn't own," I said. "He took your money and spent it, and he was planning to use the insurance payout on my daughter to pay you back." Keisha stepped forward then. She took off her sunglasses, revealing the bruising that was starting to fade, but was still visible. "He took out a policy on me," she said, her voice shaking but clear. $5 million. Double indemnity for accidental death. The room went quiet again. Even Tony looked disgusted. Insurance fraud, Tony muttered. That is low, Brad. Even for you. Brad scrambled to his feet. They are lying, he shrieked. She is crazy. He is crazy. I am the victim here. I walked up to him. I smelled the fear on him. It smelled like sweat and expensive cologne. You are not a victim, Brad, I said. You are a bad investment. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a $1 bill. The deed says you bought the property for $1 and other valuable considerations, I said. I dropped the dollar bill on the floor at his feet. Consider us square, I turned to Tony. Gentlemen, I said, tipping my hat, I believe your business is with Mr. Sterling. My daughter and I are leaving. Wait, Tony said. What about the land? The land stays, I said. It belongs to the people now. You can visit any time. Admission is free. I took Keisha's arm. We walked out of the boardroom, leaving Brad Sterling trapped in a glass cage with the lions he had tried to tame. As the heavy doors closed behind us, I heard Brad start to scream. It wasn't a scream of anger. It was the scream of a man watching his life disintegrate. We walked to the elevator. Keisha leaned her head on my shoulder. Is it over, Daddy? She asked. The sale is over, I said, pressing the down button. But the reckoning, baby girl, the reckoning is just beginning, because Brad Sterling still had one card left to play, a desperate, violent card, and I knew he wouldn't go down without trying to take us with him. The elevator doors opened. We stepped in. Stay close, I said. He is going to run, and when he runs, he is going to come for you. We walked out into the lobby. I scanned the street. My friends were there, the guys from the shop. They were parked in their trucks, watching, waiting. The financial earthquake had hit. Now we just had to survive the aftershocks. The engine of the silver Porsche screamed down my street like a banshee in its death throes. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. I knew that sound. It was the sound of a machine being pushed past its limit by a man who had lost his control. I sat on my front porch in my favorite rocking chair, the one Ruth had bought for our 30th anniversary. The wood was worn smooth where my hands had rested for a decade. Across my lap lay the Remington 870 shotgun disassembled. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard. The air smelled of impending rain and gun oil. It is a distinctive smell, gun oil. Sharp, clean, serious. I had a rag in my hand, and I was slowly, methodically wiping down the firing pin. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't running. I had sent Keisha inside to the back room with instructions to lock the door and call Solomon if she heard shouting. But I stayed out here. I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to see the man he thought he had broken. The Porsche skidded to a halt in front of my house, leaving black rubber streaks on the asphalt. Brad didn't park. He abandoned the vehicle. The door flew open and he stumbled out. He looked like a wreck. His expensive Italian suit was rumpled, the tie pulled loose and hanging around his neck like a noose. His hair, usually plastered down with gel, was wild, standing up in tufts where he had run his hands through it in desperation. But it was his eyes that told the story. They were wide, bloodshot, and frantic. They were the eyes of a man who has heard the footsteps of the Reaper behind him. He marched up the walkway, his dress shoes scuffing on the concrete. He was muttering to himself, trembling with a rage that was fueled by pure terror. "You," he screamed when he saw me. "You old son of a bitch." I didn't stop cleaning. I dipped the rag in the oil and ran it along the barrel, back and forth, back and forth. "Hello, Brad," I said without looking up. "You are early. I didn't expect you for another hour." He stormed up the steps and stood over me, blocking the dying sun. He was panting heavily, his chest heaving. "You gamed me," he shrieked, his voice cracking. "You set me up. You knew the whole time." I stopped wiping. I looked up at him slowly. "I didn't game you, Brad," I said calmly. "I just let you play your hand. You were the one who dealt the cards. I just decided to change the table." He slammed his fist into the porch column. The wood groaned. "The deed," he yelled. "The deed is worthless." I went to the bank. I handed it to Tony. "Do you know what he did? Do you know what he said when the title search came back restricted?" "I can imagine," I said, picking up the trigger assembly. "Tony doesn't strike me as a man with a sense of humor." "He gave me 24 hours, Brad screamed, leaning down into my face. Spittle flew from his mouth, landing on my cheek. I wiped it away with the oily rag. 24 hours, Moses, to get him $5 million. or he is going to kill me. He isn't going to sue me. He is going to put me in a hole in the desert. He grabbed the back of my chair, shaking it. You killed me. You signed that paper knowing it was a death sentence. I stood up then. I moved slowly but with purpose. I placed the parts of the gun on the small table next to me. I faced him. I didn't kill you, Brad, I said, my voice dropping an octave. You killed yourself. You took money from sharks. You spent it on cars and gambling, and then you tried to feed my daughter to them to save your own skin. I didn't, Brad stammered, backing up a step. I was going to pay them back. I just needed the land. The land, I repeated. You wanted the land. Well, you got it. You own the title, Brad. Congratulations. You are the proud owner of the Carter Historical Preservation Trust. Fix it. Brad begged, his anger turning to pleading. Call the city. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you were confused. We can undo it. We can lift the restriction. If we hurry, we can still sell it to Apex. Tony will wait if he knows the money is coming. I shook my head. I can't fix it, Brad. It is done. It is in the public record. That land doesn't belong to me anymore. And it certainly doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the people of this city. It belongs to the history books. But what about me? He wailed, tearing at his hair. What about my life? I looked at him with zero sympathy. You should have thought about that before you threw a firebomb through my window, I said. Brad froze. His face went pale. I don't know what you are talking about. Don't lie to me, boy, I snapped. I smelled the gasoline. I saw the car. You tried to burn me out. You tried to kill me in my sleep. And when that didn't work, you threatened to send my daughter to prison. I stepped closer to him, forcing him back toward the stairs. You wanted a war, Brad. You wanted to play gangster. Well, this is what happens when you play gangster. Sometimes the other guy shoots back. Brad looked at the gun parts on the table. He looked at the house behind me. He looked desperate. Where is she? He whispered. Where is Keisha? She is gone. I lied. She is safe, far away from you. He shook his head, his eyes darting around the yard. No, she isn't. Her car is here. I saw it parked down the street. She is inside. He tried to push past me toward the door. Keisha, he screamed. Keisha, come out here. We have to go. We have to leave town. I grabbed his arm. My grip was iron. I dug my fingers into his bicep, hitting the nerve. You are not going near her, I growled. He spun around and shoved me. It was a desperate, weak shove, but it caught me off balance. I stumbled back, hitting the rocking chair. Brad didn't wait. He lunged for the door. Keisha, open up, he yelled, pounding on the wood. Open the goddamn door! I reached for the table. I didn't have time to assemble the gun. But I didn't need to fire it. I grabbed the heavy steel barrel. It was a cold, solid bar of metal. I swung it. Crack! I hit the door frame right next to his head. The wood splintered. Brad jumped back, covering his head with his hands. He turned to face me. I stood there holding the barrel like a club. My chest was heaving. Get off my porch! I roared. Brad looked at me. He looked at the steel in my hand. He looked at the madness in my eyes. He realized that the old mechanic was gone. In his place was a father defending his cub. You are crazy, he whispered. You are all crazy. I took a step toward him, raising the barrel. Run, Brad, I said. Run to your friends. Run to Tony. Tell him you failed. Tell him you lost. Brad backed down the stairs. He stumbled on the last step, falling into the dirt. He scrambled up, his suit covered in dust. He looked at the house one last time. He looked at the window where the curtain had just moved slightly. He knew she was there. You think you won, he shouted, his voice shrill and hysterical. You think this is over. You don't know what I am capable of, Moses. I have nothing left to lose. Do you hear me? Nothing. And a man with nothing to lose is dangerous, I said. I know. That is why I am holding a steel bar. Brad stared at me for a long second. His mind was working, calculating, snapping. He realized he couldn't get past me. Not now. Not with brute force. He needed leverage. He needed a hostage. But he couldn't get into the house. He turned and ran to his car. He didn't get in. He opened the trunk. He frantically rummaged through the mess inside. He pulled out a tire iron. He stood there by the Porsche, panting, holding the tire iron. He looked back at the house. Then he looked down the street. He saw something. I followed his gaze. Coming down the street was a school bus. It was stopping at the corner. Brad's eyes lit up with a sick realization. He wasn't looking at the bus. He was looking at the idea of vulnerability. He threw the tire iron into the passenger seat and jumped into the car. He revved the engine until it screamed. This isn't over, old man, he yelled out the window. If I go down, everyone goes down. He peeled out tires, smoking, leaving a cloud of acrid rubber smoke in the air. He didn't drive toward the highway. He drove toward the back roads, toward the old industrial park, toward the places where desperate men go to hide. I watched him go. My heart was pounding in my chest, not from fear, but from the realization that I had pushed him too far. I had cornered the rat, and now the rat was going to bite anything it could reach. I dropped the gun barrel on the table. "Keisha," I yelled, turning to the door. "Keisha, get out here." The door opened. Keisha stepped out, her face pale, her phone in her hand. "Did he leave?" she asked. "He left," I said, grabbing my keys. "But he isn't done. He has that look in his eyes, Keisha. The look of a man who is planning something terrible." "What do we do?" she asked. "We have to finish this," I said. "We have to stop him before he hurts someone else." I looked at the sun setting. The shadows were long and dark. "Get in the truck," I said. "Where are we going?" "We are going to hunt him down," I said, "before he finds a way to come back." I walked to my F-150. It was old. It was dented. But it was built for work. And tonight the work was survival. Brad Sterling had made his choice. He had chosen money over family. He had chosen violence over honor. Now he was going to learn that you can't outrun the consequences of your own greed. I started the engine. The V8 roared to life. It sounded like Judgment Day. "Hold on tight, baby girl," I said as Keisha climbed in. "It is going to be a bumpy night." The roar of the Porsche engine didn't fade away like I hoped it would. It got louder. It was a high-pitched mechanical scream that tore through the quiet of the neighborhood. I had my hand on the door handle of my truck ready to climb in and get Keisha to safety, but I froze. The sound wasn't moving away from us. It was coming back. Brad hadn't run. He had circled the block. He had realized in his manic desperation that running alone was a death sentence. He needed a shield. He needed a bargaining chip. "Watch out!" I yelled, shoving Keisha behind me. The silver car careened around the corner, drifting sideways on the asphalt tires, smoking. Brad didn't brake. He swerved violently, jumping the curb and slamming into the side of my Ford F-150. Metal crunched against metal. My truck rocked on its suspension, absorbing the blow like a heavyweight boxer, but the impact pinned the driver's side door shut. We were trapped between the house and the wreckage. Brad kicked his door open. He stumbled out, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. He was holding the tire iron again. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Keisha. "Get in the car!" he screamed, his voice shredding his throat. "Get in the damn car, Keisha!" "No!" Keisha cried, grabbing the back of my jacket. "Daddy, help me!" I stepped forward, raising my hands. Brad put the weapon down. "You don't want to do this." "Stay back, old man," Brad shrieked, swinging the iron wildly. "I swear to God I will crack your skull open. I have nothing to lose, Moses. You took it all. Now I am taking what is mine." He lunged. Not at me. He feinted left and then dove for Keisha. It happened so fast. I am 71 years old. My mind is sharp, but my reflexes aren't what they used to be. I reached for him, but his momentum carried him past me. He grabbed Keisha by her hair. She screamed a sound that will haunt me until the day I die. He dragged her. He didn't pull her like a person. He dragged her like a sack of cement. He threw her toward the open passenger door of the Porsche. She tried to fight. She clawed at his face, leaving red streaks on his cheek, but he was fueled by a hysterical strength. He shoved her inside and slammed the door. He pointed the tire iron at me one last time. "You did this!" he yelled, spittle flying from his mouth. "This is on you, Moses." He jumped into the driver's seat. "Lift the restriction," he screamed over the revving engine. "Call the city. Call Solomon. Tear up that trust, Moses. You have 1 hour. 1 hour to text me a photo of the cancellation papers. And if I don't," I yelled, moving toward the car. "If you don't," Brad screamed, his eyes wide and white, "then I am driving this car off the Blackwood Canyon Bridge, and she goes down with me." He slammed the car into reverse. The tires squealed. He backed out of the yard, tearing up the grass I had just raked. He spun the car around and floored it. Daddy Keisha screamed from the passenger window, her palms pressing against the glass. Then they were gone. I stood there in the cloud of exhaust and dust, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My truck was pinned. My daughter was gone. And a madman was driving her toward a 300-foot drop. My hand went to my pocket for my phone. My thumb hovered over 911. But I didn't press send. I stopped. I forced myself to think, to breathe. If I called the police, they would send patrol cars. They would turn on their sirens. They would chase him. And Brad was already on the edge. If he saw blue lights in his rearview mirror, he wouldn't pull over. He would panic. He would jerk the wheel. He would go over the edge just to spite them. A high-speed police chase ends in a crash 90% of the time. I couldn't take those odds. Not with my baby girl in the passenger seat. I needed precision. I needed force. But I needed control. I needed men who knew how to drive better than any cop. I needed men who knew every back road, every shortcut, and every pothole in this city. I needed men who understood engines and physics and loyalty. I didn't call the police. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Big T, Tyrone. Big T Washington was the foreman at my shop for 20 years. He was a mountain of a man with hands like shovels and a heart of gold. He ran a crew of guys who looked rough, talked rough, and worked harder than anyone I knew. Brad had met them once at a company barbecue. He had called them thugs. He had called them grease monkeys. He had turned up his nose at their stained coveralls and their loud laughter. He didn't know that those thugs were the best drivers in the state. The phone rang twice. Boss Big T's voice boomed. "It has been a minute. Everything good. It is a code red T." I said, my voice steady and cold. The line went silent instantly. The joking tone vanished. Code red was a term we used back in the day when a job went sideways, when a lift broke, or when we had to deal with trouble. "Talk to me," Boss T said. "Brad Sterling just took Keisha," I said. "He snatched her. He is in a silver Porsche 911. He is heading for Blackwood Canyon. He threatened to drive off the bridge if I don't give him the land." I heard the sound of a wrench dropping on concrete in the background. "Say less," T growled. "Is he armed? He has a tire iron and he is crazy," I said. "He is desperate, T. He is cornered. I can't call the cops. If they chase him, he will jump. I need to box him in. I need to stop him before he gets to the bridge. Where are you, boss?" "I am at the house. My truck is pinned. I need wheels." "I am 5 minutes out," T said. "I am bringing the heavy wrecker, and I am hitting the radio. Who do we need?" "Everyone," I said. "Call Leroy. Call Marcus. Call Old Man Jenkins with the flatbed. Tell them to block the canyon road from the north. Tell them to set up a wall." "I got you," T said. "That boy made a mistake today. He messed with the wrong family." I hung up. I walked to my truck. The driver's side was crushed in, but the passenger side was clear. I climbed in across the seat. I turned the key. The engine groaned, but it started. It was a Ford. It wouldn't die just because it got hit. I slammed it into gear. I scraped the side of the house, tearing off the mirror, but I broke free. I pulled out onto the street just as Big T arrived. He wasn't driving a car. He was driving a Peterbilt 389 heavy-duty tow truck. It was black chrome and terrifying. It had a push bumper on the front that could move a freight train. He honked the air horn, a deep, mournful blast that signaled war. I pulled up next to him. He rolled down the window. "Get in," Boss T yelled. "You can't catch a Porsche in that beat-up Ford." I jumped out of my truck and climbed up into the cab of the Peterbilt. It smelled of diesel and stale coffee. It smelled like home. T handed me a CB radio mic. "The boys are listening," he said. "Direct the traffic." I pressed the button. "Breaker 19, this is Moses Carter." The radio crackled with a dozen voices. "We hear you, Moses. We are rolling. We got your back." These were men who had been ignored by society, men who had been gentrified out of their neighborhoods, men who fixed the cars that people like Brad drove but were never allowed to drive them. "Listen up," I said into the mic. "The target is a silver Porsche. He is moving fast toward Blackwood. He thinks he is the king of the road. He thinks he can outrun us." I looked at T. He was shifting gears, his massive arm flexing. The turbo whined as the huge truck accelerated. "We are going to teach him a lesson about torque," I said. "We are not going to chase him. We are going to hunt him. Marcus, take the flatbed to the junction of Route 9. Block the on-ramp. Leroy, take your dually and cut through the industrial park. Meet him at the river crossing. Jenkins, get the heavy hauler to the bridge. Park it sideways. Nobody gets through. Copy that, Moses. On it. He ain't going nowhere." We hit the highway. Big T floored it. The Peterbilt roared, shaking the pavement. We were doing 80 in a truck that weighed 30,000 pounds. I looked out the window. I saw other trucks merging from the side streets. Tow trucks, dump trucks, pickup trucks with lift kits. A convoy of iron and steel converging on one scared little man in a sports car. Brad Sterling thought he was smart. He thought he was sophisticated. He thought power came from a bank account or a signature on a deed. He was about to learn that real power comes from the people you treat with respect. He had called my friends dirt. Well, the dirt was coming for him, and we weren't going to stop until I had my daughter back. Faster, T, I said, watching the mile markers fly by. He has a head start. T grinned, showing a gold tooth. Don't worry, boss. A Porsche is fast. But it can't outrun a radio. We are the net, and the fish is already caught. He just doesn't know it yet. I gripped the dashboard. Hold on, Keisha, I whispered. The cavalry is coming, and we are bringing the heavy metal. The engine of my 1998 Ford F-150 roared like a waking dragon. To the outside world, it looked like a beat-up work truck with a dented bumper and faded black paint that had seen too many winters. But underneath the hood was a different story. I had spent 10 years rebuilding this engine. I had bored out the cylinders, installed high-flow headers, and dropped in a supercharger that I salvaged from a wrecked Mustang. It wasn't pretty, but it had 700 horsepower of pure American torque. And right now I needed every single horse. Brad Sterling was a quarter-mile ahead of me in his silver Porsche 911. That car was a marvel of German engineering designed for the Autobahn. It could do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. It was sleek, aerodynamic, and fast. But it had one weakness: the driver. Brad didn't know how to drive. He knew how to steer. There is a difference. He was hammering the gas on the straightaways but slamming on the brakes in the corners. He was panicked. He was erratic. He was driving with his ego, not his brain. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. The truck vibrated around me, a violent shaking that rattled my teeth. I didn't care. I kept my foot buried in the floor mat. The speedometer needle climbed past 90, then 100. The old truck screamed in protest, but it held together. It held together because I built it to hold together. I reached for the CB radio mic hanging from the dashboard. Big T, what is your 20? I yelled over the roar of the wind. We are at the junction, boss. Big T's voice crackled back, static filling the cab. We have the heavy wrecker parked across the north ramp. He can't get to the interstate. Good, I said, swerving around a minivan that honked at me. Push him west. Force him onto the industrial service road. Copy that, Moses. Leroy is bringing the dump truck to block the east exit. He has only one way to go. I saw the brake lights of the Porsche flare red as Brad realized the highway on ramp was blocked by a massive wall of black steel. Big T's wrecker was parked sideways, lights flashing, looking like a fortress. Brad swerved violently, tires screeching, smoke billowing as he jerked the wheel to the left. He was heading for the service road just like I planned. The service road was a nightmare of potholes, gravel, and broken pavement. It ran behind the old textile factories, the ones that had been shut down for 20 years. A Porsche with 2 inches of ground clearance has no business being on a road like that. I smiled a grim, tight smile. Welcome to my world, Brad, I whispered. I cut the wheel, drifting the heavy truck onto the gravel. Stones pinged against the undercarriage like bullets. I didn't slow down. My suspension was reinforced. My tires were all-terrain. I ate the bumps that were tearing his expensive suspension apart. I saw the Porsche ahead bouncing violently. Sparks flew as his undercarriage scraped the asphalt. He was losing speed. He was fighting the car. I closed the gap. 500 yards. 300 yards. I could see 2 silhouettes in the car. Brad hunched over the wheel, driving for his life. And Keisha, my baby girl. She was pressed against the window, looking back at me. I could see the terror on her face even from here. Hold on, baby, I said to the windshield. Daddy is coming. We tore past the abandoned warehouses. The chase was a blur of gray concrete and rusted chain-link fences. Brad was trying to get to Blackwood Canyon Road. If he reached the canyon, he would have a straight shot to the bridge, and if he reached the bridge, he would carry out his threat. I couldn't let him get to the asphalt. I had to end this here in the dirt and the grime. Moses Leroy's voice came over the radio. He is coming up on the switchback. I can't get the dump truck there in time. He is going to clear the industrial park. I cursed under my breath. If he cleared the park, he would be on the canyon road in 2 minutes. I looked at the road ahead. There was a sharp turn coming up, followed by a short straightaway before the bridge approach. That was my window. That was the kill zone. I shifted gears, dropping the truck into third. The engine screamed, the supercharger whining like a jet turbine. I surged forward. The heavy steel bumper of my truck loomed larger in his rearview mirror. I saw Brad look in the mirror. I saw his eyes widen. He hadn't expected the old truck to keep up. He thought he could outrun a mechanic. He floored it. The Porsche shot forward, its rear tires kicking up a cloud of dust. But he miscalculated the turn. He took it too wide. His back tire clipped the dirt shoulder. The car wobbled. I didn't brake. I cut the corner, driving 2 wheels into the ditch to maintain my line. I bounced back onto the road, right on his bumper. I was 10 feet away. I could see the sweat on the back of his neck. I picked up the mic one last time. T, clear the channel. I am taking him out. Do it, boss. We are right behind you. I hung up the mic. I gripped the wheel with both hands. I had spent 40 years working for the city. I fixed buses. I fixed trains. But back in the 80s, I spent 5 years in the motor pool for the police department. I worked on the interceptors. And I didn't just fix them. I talked to the cops. I learned their tactics. They taught me about the pit maneuver, precision immobilization technique. It is simple physics. You don't ram the car from behind. That just makes them go faster. You touch the rear quarter panel, you apply lateral pressure, you break the traction of the rear tires, and then gravity does the rest. But doing it at 80 miles an hour on a gravel road with your daughter in the passenger seat requires more than physics. It requires nerves of steel. If I hit him too hard, the Porsche would roll. If I hit him too soft, he would recover and keep going. I had to be perfect. I pulled up alongside him. My front bumper was even with his rear wheel. Brad looked over. He saw me. He saw the grim determination on my face. He swerved, trying to sideswipe me, trying to push me off the road. But you can't push a 3-ton truck with a sports car. He bounced off my fender with a sickening crunch of metal. My truck barely shuddered. His car fishtailed. Now. I turned the wheel sharply to the right, just a few inches. My heavy steel bumper made contact with his rear quarter panel. I felt the impact. It wasn't a crash, it was a shove, a calculated mechanical shove. I kept my foot on the gas. I pushed through the contact point. The rear of the Porsche broke loose. The wide tires lost their grip on the gravel. The car began to rotate. It happened in slow motion. The silver car spun counterclockwise. It turned 90 degrees, then 180. It was sliding backwards, now facing me. I saw Brad's face through the windshield. He was screaming, his hands flailing uselessly at the wheel. I slammed on my brakes. My truck locked up, sliding in a cloud of dust. The Porsche kept spinning. It slid off the road into the dirt shoulder. It hit a berm of earth and tipped up on 2 wheels. For a terrifying second, I thought it was going to flip. I thought I had killed them. But it didn't flip. It slammed back down onto its wheels with a bone-jarring thud. It slid for another 20 feet, burying itself in a cloud of red dust and silence. I stopped my truck 30 yards away, blocking the road. I killed the engine. The silence that followed was deafening. The dust settled slowly, revealing the silver Porsche. It was battered. The bumper was hanging off. The side was crushed, but it was upright. I opened my door and jumped out. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced them to move. I reached under the seat and grabbed the heavy iron wrench I kept there. It wasn't a weapon. It was a tool, but today it was an equalizer. I ran toward the car. Smoke was rising from the Porsche's engine. "Keisha," I yelled. "Keisha, answer me." The passenger door groaned and popped open. Keisha stumbled out. She was coughing, waving the dust away. She had a cut on her forehead and her dress was torn, but she was moving. "Daddy," she sobbed, running toward me. I caught her in my arms. I held her tight, burying my face in her hair. She was shaking violently. "I got you, baby girl," I whispered. "I got you. You are safe." Then I heard the driver's door open. Brad fell out of the car. He hit the dirt on his hands and knees. He was gasping for air. He looked up and saw us. He saw me holding his wife. He saw the wrench in my hand. He didn't run. He couldn't. The fight had been knocked out of him by 700 horsepower of American steel. He looked at the wreckage of his car. He looked at the blocked road where Big T's massive tow truck was just pulling into view, its lights flashing like a disco ball of justice. He looked at me. You crazy old man," he wheezed, blood trickling from his nose. "You could have killed us." I handed Keisha to Big T, who had just jumped out of his truck. "Watch her, T," I said. I walked over to Brad. I stood over him, blocking out the sun. "I didn't kill you, Brad," I said, looking down at him. "I just stopped you." I raised the wrench. Brad flinched, cowering in the dirt, covering his head with his hands. "Please," he whimpered. "Don't hit me. Please." I looked at him. A man who preyed on the weak. A man who used fear as a weapon. Now lying in the dirt, begging for mercy. I lowered the wrench. "I am not going to hit you, Brad," I said. "That would be too easy." I turned to look at the convoy of trucks arriving. My friends, my brothers. They climbed out of their cabs holding tire irons and crowbars, forming a circle around us. A wall of judgment. "We are just going to wait," I said. "Wait for what?" Brad asked, his voice trembling. I pointed down the road where the sound of sirens was finally cutting through the air. "We are going to wait for the law," I said. Solomon had made the call the second I initiated the PIT maneuver. The police weren't chasing a speeder anymore. They were coming to a crash scene. A scene where a kidnapper had been stopped by a concerned father. Brad looked at the approaching lights. He looked at Keisha, who was safe in Big T's arms. He realized it was over. Truly over. He put his head down in the dirt and began to cry. Not tears of remorse. Tears of defeat. I walked back to my truck. I leaned against the dented fender. I took a deep breath of the dusty air. It tasted like gasoline and victory. I looked at my hands. They were steady. The mechanic had fixed the problem. The machine was broken, but the family was safe. The dust from the crash hung in the air like a red fog, choking the sunlight and turning the world into a hazy blur of violence. My truck sat diagonally across the road, steam hissing from the radiator where the Porsche had smashed into it. The Porsche itself was a ruin. It was wedged against the berm of dirt, the silver paint crumpled like tinfoil, the expensive German engineering reduced to scrap metal in a heartbeat. I kicked my door open. It groaned in protest, metal screeching against metal. I jumped down onto the gravel. My legs felt heavy. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my hands were steady. I reached into the truck bed and grabbed the one tool I trusted more than any other. A 24-inch pipe wrench, solid steel, heavy enough to break a bolt, heavy enough to break a man. I didn't reach for the shotgun. A gun is a coward's weapon at close range. It is impersonal. And with my daughter in the line of fire, I couldn't risk a stray pellet. I needed precision. I needed to be close enough to look him in the eye when I ended this. "Get back, old man," Brad screamed from the cloud of dust. "Stay back or I will open her up right here." I stopped 10 feet away. The dust settled enough for me to see them. It was a nightmare brought to life. Brad had dragged Keisha out of the passenger seat. He was standing behind her, using her body as a human shield. His arm was wrapped tight around her neck, choking her slightly, forcing her head back, and in his other hand he held a knife. It wasn't a combat knife. It looked like a box cutter, the kind you keep in a glove box for emergencies. But the blade was extended, and it was pressed against the soft skin of my daughter's throat. Keisha was crying. Her hands were clawing at his arm uselessly. Her eyes were wide with a terror that no father should ever have to see. I saw Big T and the boys climbing out of their trucks in the distance. They held tire irons and crowbars, but they froze when they saw the knife. They knew the score. If they rushed him, he would panic. If he panicked, he would slice. We were alone in the circle. Just me, the wolf, and the lamb. "Drop the wrench," Brad yelled, his voice cracking. "Drop it, Moses. Kick it over here, or I swear to God I will kill her. I have nothing left. You took it all. If I am going down, she is coming with me." He was shaking. The blade was trembling against her neck. A small trickle of blood appeared where the tip broke the skin. I didn't drop the wrench. I tightened my grip until my knuckles turned white. I looked at Brad. I looked at the sweat dripping down his face, the madness in his eyes. He was broken. He was a machine that had thrown a rod and was tearing itself apart from the inside. "You are already down, Brad," I said, my voice low and calm. "Look around you. The road is blocked. The police are 5 minutes away. There is no way out of this canyon. I will drive off the edge," he screamed, dragging Keisha backward toward the drop-off. The guardrail was flimsy, just a rusted strip of metal between the road and a 300-foot fall into the river below. "I will jump!" he shrieked. "I will take her over the side!" I took a step forward. Just one step. "Don't move," he yelled, pressing the knife harder. Keisha whimpered, a sound of pure animal fear. I stopped. I didn't look at the knife. I didn't look at the drop. I looked at my daughter. "Keisha," I said. She was looking at the ground, her eyes squeezed shut, waiting for the end. "Keisha, look at me," I commanded. My voice wasn't gentle. It was the voice of a father teaching a lesson. It was the voice I used when she was 10 years old and scared to ride her bike without training wheels. "Open your eyes, baby girl. Look at Daddy." She opened her eyes. They locked onto mine. In that moment, the rest of the world faded away. The dust, the sirens in the distance, the man breathing down her neck, it all disappeared. It was just us. "Don't look at him," I said. "Don't look at the knife. Look at me." I held her gaze. I poured every ounce of strength I had into her. "Do you remember?" I asked. "Do you remember the garage? Do you remember what I taught you when the neighborhood boys tried to steal your lunch money?" She blinked. Confusion flickered in her eyes, then recognition. "I taught you that you are not a victim," I said. "I taught you that you are a Carter, and Carters don't wait to be saved." Brad laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. "Shut up, old man. She is weak. She is pathetic. She does what I tell her to do." He shifted his grip, trying to get a better hold on her neck. For a split second, his balance shifted. "Now, Keisha," I roared. It wasn't a conscious thought, it was muscle memory. It was the instinct I had drilled into her 20 years ago in the backyard. If a man grabs you from behind, you don't pull away. You bring the pain. Keisha's face changed. The fear vanished, replaced by a flash of rage. She opened her mouth and clamped her teeth down on Brad's forearm. She didn't just bite, she tore. She bit down with the force of a woman who has been silenced for 5 years. "Ah!" Brad screamed, dropping the knife as the pain shot through his nerve. He tried to pull his arm back, but Keisha wasn't done. She lifted her right foot, the one wearing the heavy boot she had put on for the hospital visit, and she stomped. She drove her heel down into the arch of his foot with everything she had. I heard the crunch of small bones breaking even from 10 feet away. Brad howled, releasing his grip on her neck. He stumbled back, hopping on one foot, clutching his bleeding arm. Keisha didn't freeze. She scrambled away, diving onto the gravel, rolling toward me. And I moved. I didn't run like a young man. I moved like a piston. I closed the distance in 2 strides. Brad looked up, his eyes wide with shock. He reached for the knife on the ground. "No, you don't," I growled. I swung the wrench. I didn't aim for his head. I didn't aim for his chest. I aimed for the machine. I aimed for the part that made him run. I swung the heavy steel head of the wrench into his right knee. The lateral blow was perfect. It was the same force I used to break a rusted lug nut. Crack! The sound was sickening. It was the sound of a structural failure. Brad's leg buckled sideways at an angle that legs aren't supposed to bend. He didn't scream at first. The shock took his breath away. He just collapsed, hitting the dirt like a puppet with its strings cut. Then the scream came, a guttural, animalistic wail of agony that echoed off the canyon walls. He rolled in the dust, clutching his shattered knee, his expensive suit turning brown with dirt and blood. I stood over him, breathing hard, the wrench still in my hand. I could have hit him again. I could have finished it. Every instinct in my body wanted to crush him for what he did to my little girl. But I stopped. I looked at Keisha. She was sitting on the ground, wiping blood from her neck. She was watching me. "I am not a monster," I whispered. I tossed the wrench aside. It clanged on the asphalt. Big T and the boys rushed in then. They didn't need to hit him. Brad wasn't going anywhere. Big T grabbed him by the back of his jacket and pinned him to the ground, his massive knee pressing into Brad's back. "Stay down," Son T growled. "You caused enough trouble for one lifetime." Then the sirens arrived. Blue and red lights flooded the canyon, turning the dust into a strobe light show. 2 cruisers skidded to a halt, followed by an unmarked sedan. Solomon stepped out of the sedan, followed by 4 uniformed officers. Solomon ran to us. He looked at Brad, screaming in the dirt. He looked at me. He looked at Keisha. "Are you okay?" he asked, breathless. "We are alive," I said. The officers swarmed Brad. They didn't treat him gently. They saw the knife. They saw the blood on Keisha's neck. They cuffed his hands behind his back, ignoring his screams about his knee. "Get a medic," one officer yelled. "We have a suspect with a severe leg injury." Another officer walked over to me. He looked at the wrench on the ground. He looked at my hands. "Sir, step away from the weapon," he said, his hand resting on his holster. I raised my hand slowly. "It is just a tool, officer," I said. "I am a mechanic." Solomon stepped in, flashing his badge. "Officer, this man is my client. He just prevented a kidnapping and an attempted murder. That man on the ground abducted his daughter and threatened to drive off the bridge. This was self-defense, pure and simple." The officer looked at Keisha. She stood up, shaky but standing tall. "It is true," she said, her voice raspy. "He saved my life. He saved me." The officer nodded. He signaled his partner to lower his weapon. Brad was dragged toward the ambulance that had just arrived. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, he looked at me. His face was gray with shock, but his eyes were still full of hate. "You broke my leg," he hissed. "You broke my leg, you old bastard." I walked over to the stretcher. I leaned down close so only he could hear. "I broke your leg, Brad," I said, "because you tried to break my family. Be glad I didn't break your neck." They shoved him into the ambulance. The doors closed, shutting out his voice forever. I turned back to Keisha. She was standing by the truck, wrapped in a blanket that Big T had given her. She looked small. She looked tired, but she was alive. I walked over to her. I didn't say anything. I just opened my arms. She fell into them sobbing. But these weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. Tears of release. "I got him, Daddy," she whispered. I bit him. I really bit him. I laughed a rough sound that hurt my chest. "You sure did, baby girl," I said, stroking her hair. "You bit him good. You remembered the lesson." She looked up at me. Her eyes were clear for the first time in years. "I forgot who I was," she said. "But you reminded me." I kissed her forehead. "You are a Carter," I said, "and Carters don't break. We just get tougher." Big T walked over, clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Good work, boss," he said. "The boys are clearing the road. We will tow your truck back to the shop. It looks like it needs a new radiator." I looked at my battered Ford. It was crushed. It was ugly, but it was still standing. "It will run again." "T," I said. "It just needs a little work." Solomon walked over, wiping sweat from his forehead. "The police are taking statements," he said. "They are charging him with everything, Moses. Kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, plus the fraud charges we filed this morning. He is going away for a long time." "Good," I said. "Make sure they put him in a cell with a view of a brick wall." I put my arm around Keisha. "Come on, baby girl," I said. "Let's go home. I think we both need a drink. And not that expensive wine. I am thinking a cold beer on the porch." She smiled. A real smile. "That sounds perfect, Daddy." We walked toward Solomon's car, leaving the wreckage behind us. The sun had set. The canyon was dark. But I didn't mind the dark anymore. I had walked through the fire. I had faced the wolf. And I had brought my lamb home. The mechanic had finished the job. The engine was running smooth again. The courthouse steps were bathed in the cold gray light of a November morning. It had been 6 months since the day on Blackwood Canyon Bridge, but the shadow of Brad Sterling still loomed large over our lives. Today, that shadow finally broke. I stood next to Keisha as the judge read the sentence: life without the possibility of parole. Brad didn't look at us. He sat at the defense table in his orange jumpsuit, looking smaller and paler than the man who had worn Italian suits and driven a Porsche. He had lost his arrogance. He had lost his sneer. He was just a number now. Inmate 49201. The jury had heard everything: the wire fraud, the arson, the kidnapping, the insurance scheme. They had deliberated for less than 2 hours. When the gavel came down, it sounded like the final nail in a coffin. Keisha didn't cheer. She didn't cry. She just let out a breath she seemed to have been holding since the day she married him. She gripped my hand tight, her knuckles white. "Let's go, Daddy," she whispered. "I want to leave." We walked out of the courtroom, past the reporters who shouted questions we ignored. We got into my truck, which Big T and the boys had hammered back into shape. It still bore the scars of the collision, a dent in the door and a scrape along the fender, but it ran strong, just like us. The drive home was quiet. Keisha stared out the window, watching the city roll by. She looked exhausted. The trial had forced her to relive every moment of the abuse, every lie, every manipulation. She had testified against her husband. She had laid bare her own shame, her own complicity. When we pulled into the driveway of my house, the sun was beginning to set. The charred spot on the living room floor had been scrubbed clean, but the memory of the fire still lingered in the air. Keisha didn't want to go inside. She sat on the porch swing, wrapping her arms around herself. "I feel sick, Daddy," she said, her voice hollow. I sat down next to her. The swing creaked a familiar, comforting sound. "It is over, baby girl," I said. "He is gone. He can't hurt you anymore." "It isn't over," she said, shaking her head. "He is gone, but I am still here. And I am broken." She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I helped him, Daddy. In the beginning. I signed those papers. I let him take out the loans in my name. I let him lie to you about the taxes. I knew he was shady, I knew he was greedy, but I stayed. I let him turn me into this." She gestured to herself as if she were something dirty. "I am just as guilty as he is," she whispered. "I should be in that cell with him." I felt a pang in my chest. This was the real prison Brad had built for her. Not steel bars, but guilt. He had made her believe she was worthless without him. I stood up. "Come inside, Keisha," I said. "I want to show you something." "I don't want to go in there," she said, looking at the door. "It reminds me of the fire." "Come inside," I repeated gently but firmly. "Please." She followed me into the house. We walked through the living room, past the spot where the rug used to be. I led her to the hallway, to the small table where I kept the family photos. There was one frame in particular, A black and white photo taken 40 years ago. It showed a young woman with fierce eyes and a determined chin holding a baby in her arms, Ruth, my wife, Keisha's mother. I picked up the photo and handed it to Keisha. "Look at her," I said. Keisha took the frame. Her fingers traced the glass. "Mama," she whispered. "Your mother grew up in a time when people told her she was nothing," I said. "They told her she couldn't vote. They told her she couldn't go to certain schools. They told her she was born to serve." I looked at the photo, remembering the fire in Ruth's eyes. But she didn't listen. She marched. She shouted. She stood on picket lines when she was pregnant with you. She faced down men with guns and dogs and water hoses. And she never once looked down. She never once let a man tell her who she was. Not even me. I put my hand on Keisha's shoulder. She didn't fight those battles so her daughter could be a doormat. I said, my voice thick with emotion. "She didn't raise you to be a victim, Keisha. She raised you to be a warrior." Keisha looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "But I failed her daddy. I let him control me." "I was weak. You were young," I corrected. "You were in love. And you were manipulated by a master manipulator. That doesn't make you weak, Keisha. It makes you human." I took the photo from her and placed it back on the table. Brad Sterling is a predator. Predators look for the kindest hearts because they are the easiest to break. He saw your light and he wanted to put it out. But he didn't put it out. Look at you. You are standing here. You testified against him. You bit him. You fought back. I turned her to face the mirror in the hallway. "Look at yourself, Keisha. Really look." She looked at her reflection. She saw the dark circles, the thin face, the scar on her neck where the knife had pressed. "I see a mess," she whispered. "I see a survivor," I said. "I see a woman who walked through hell and came out the other side. I see my daughter." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I found this in the safe," I said. "Ruth wanted you to have it when you were ready." I opened the box. Inside was a simple gold locket. Keisha gasped. "Mama's locket." I took it out and fastened it around her neck. It rested against her collarbone, a small, heavy weight. "Open it," I said. She opened the locket. Inside was a tiny inscription. "Own your ground." Ruth had it engraved the day we bought the land for the garage, I explained. It was her motto, her creed. Keisha touched the locket. Her tears slowed. "Own your ground," she repeated softly. "That is what you have to do now," I said. "You have to own your ground. You have to take back your life. Not for me, not for Brad, for yourself." "But how?" she asked, looking lost. "I have nothing, Daddy. The house is gone. My credit is ruined. My license is suspended pending the investigation. I am 32 years old and I am starting from zero." "Zero is a good place to start," I said. "It is clean, it is honest. And you are not starting from zero. You have me, you have this house, and you have a job if you want it." "A job?" she asked. "What job?" "No pharmacy will hire me." I smiled. "The Carter Historical Preservation Trust," I said. "We need a director, someone to manage the programs, someone to organize the community outreach, someone who knows how to handle paperwork and keep the books straight." Keisha's eyes widened. "Me? You want me to run the trust?" "Who better?" I asked. "You know the history, you know the neighborhood, and you know what it feels like to almost lose it all. That makes you perfect for the job." "But I am not a historian. I am a pharmacist." "You are smart," I said. "You are organized, and you are a Carter. You can learn the history. What you can't learn is heart, and you have plenty of that." I walked to the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of iced tea. I handed one to her. "Brad is in a cage," I said. "He will be there for the rest of his life. He will rot. But you have the whole world in front of you." I clinked my glass against hers. "Don't let him win from inside that cell, Keisha. If you give up, if you hate yourself, he wins. The best revenge isn't seeing him suffer. It is seeing you thrive." Keisha took a sip of tea. She looked at the locket again. She looked at the photo of her mother. She took a deep breath. Her shoulders straightened. The haunted look in her eyes faded just a fraction, replaced by a spark of determination. "I will take the job," she said. I smiled. "Good. Because we start Monday. And I warn you, the pay is terrible, but the boss is pretty handsome." She laughed then. A real laugh. It was rusty and quiet, but it was there. I hugged her. I held her tight, feeling her heart beat against mine. "Welcome home, baby girl," I whispered. We walked out to the porch. The sun had set, leaving a streak of purple across the sky. The air was cool and clean. We sat on the swing in silence, watching the fireflies dance in the yard. I looked at my hands. They were old. They were tired. But they had held on. They had held on to the land. They had held on to the family. And now they were ready to let go of the anger. Brad Sterling was the past. Keisha was the future. And as I watched her touch the locket around her neck, I knew that the ground we stood on was solid. It had been tested by fire, and it had held. We were Carters, and we owned our ground. Winter turned to spring the way it always does in this city. The gray slush melted away, revealing the cracked pavement and the hardy weeds that refused to die. But this year the thaw revealed something else too. It revealed a new beginning for the corner of Highland and 10th. For months, people in the neighborhood had whispered about what was happening at Carter's garage. They saw the construction crews. They saw the delivery trucks. They saw me and Big T hauling out scrap metal and bringing in new lifts, new diagnostic computers, and fresh tools. Brad Sterling had looked at my deed and seen a dead end. He saw a historical preservation trust and thought it meant the land was frozen in time, useless and profitable only as a tax write-off. But Brad was a man who only read the headlines. He never read the fine print. If he had, he would have seen the clause that Solomon and I had buried deep in the charter, the educational use clause. The trust didn't just protect the building from being torn down. It designated the garage as a site for the advancement of vocational skills for underprivileged youth. It was a 99-year mandate. We couldn't build condos, we couldn't build a tech hub, but we could build a school. And that is exactly what we did. I stood in the center of the main bay. The air no longer smelled of stagnant oil and old frustration. It smelled of fresh paint and possibility. The skylights had been cleaned, letting in streams of natural light that danced on the polished concrete floors. Around me were 20 kids. They were teenagers, mostly. Kids from the projects, kids who had dropped out of high school, kids who had been told by society that they were broken parts that couldn't be fixed. They wore blue coveralls with their names stitched on the pocket. They held wrenches and multimeters with a mixture of awkwardness and awe. Big T was over by the lift teaching a group of boys how to balance a tire. He was laughing his deep, booming laugh that shook the rafters. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was a professor of torque. And over in the office, enclosed by clean glass walls, sat the director of operations, Keisha. She looked up from her desk and waved at me. She wasn't wearing designer dresses anymore. She was wearing a sensible blazer and slacks. Her hair was pulled back in a practical bun. But the most important change was in her face. The fear was gone. The hollow, haunted look of a woman walking on eggshells had been replaced by the sharp, focused gaze of a woman in charge. She walked out of the office holding a clipboard. She moved with purpose. "Dad," she said, checking a list. "The safety inspector is coming at 2. I have the logs ready. And the shipment of safety goggles just arrived. I put them in the supply locker." I smiled. She was a natural. Her pharmacy training, her attention to detail, her ability to manage inventory, it all translated perfectly. She wasn't managing pills anymore. She was managing the health and safety of the next generation of mechanics. "You are doing a great job, baby girl," I said. She smiled back, a real smile that reached her eyes. "It feels good," she said. "It feels real. I spent so long living in a fantasy world, Dad. A world of credit and lies. This is solid. I can touch it." She looked around the shop. "And Brad?" she asked, her voice dropping slightly. "I haven't heard from him," I said. "And I don't expect to. He is serving 3 consecutive life sentences. His appeals were denied last week." Keisha nodded. She didn't look sad. She looked relieved. "He wanted to sell this place," she said. "He wanted to turn it into a glass box for people who stare at screens all day. He didn't understand," I said, watching a young girl successfully remove a spark plug. "He didn't understand that you don't build a legacy by tearing things down. You build it by teaching others how to build." I walked over to the young girl. She was struggling with the ratchet, her small hands slipping on the grease. "Here," I said, gently covering her hand with mine. "Don't force it. Feel the thread. The bolt wants to come out. You just have to ask it nicely." She tried again, applying steady pressure instead of brute force. The bolt turned with a satisfying click. "I got it," she beamed, looking up at me. "I got it, Mr. Carter. Call me Moses," I said, patting her shoulder. "Mr. Carter is my father." And he is probably looking down right now, wondering why it took me so long to figure this out. The day flew by. It was hard work. Hard. My back ached. My knees popped, but my spirit soared. For the first time in years, I wasn't just fixing cars. I was fixing the future. I was giving these kids the one thing Brad Sterling tried to take away from me: dignity. At 5 o'clock, the bell rang. The students cleaned their stations, wiping down their tools and hanging them on the shadow boards. It was a rule I insisted on. Respect the tool, and the tool respects you. They filed out shouting goodbyes, laughing, pushing each other. They walked out into the evening sun with grease on their hands and hope in their hearts. Keisha and I were the last ones left. We turned off the main lights, leaving only the security lamps glowing softly. We walked out the front door. Above the entrance, a new sign hung proud and bright: the Ruth Carter Vocational Center. We stood on the sidewalk looking at it. The street lights flickered on, humming to life. "Mom would have loved this," Keisha said softly. "She would have." I agreed. "She always wanted you to be a doctor or a lawyer, but I think she would have been proudest of this. You are healing people, Keisha. You are just using a different kind of medicine." Keisha linked her arm through mine. She rested her head on my shoulder. "I checked the accounts today," she said. "The trust is healthy. The donations are coming in. We have enough to open a second class in the fall." I looked at the building, my garage, my life. It wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the trust. It belonged to the city. And that was fine by me. "I realized something, Keisha," I said, looking at the brickwork I had laid with my own hands 40 years ago. "What is that, Dad?" "I spent my whole life thinking that this land was my wealth. I thought the dirt and the bricks were what made me a man. When Brad tried to take it, I fought him like a demon because I thought he was taking my value. I looked at her. I looked at the locket around her neck. But he wasn't taking my value. He was just taking things. Things can be replaced. Things can be bought and sold." I squeezed her arm. "But what we have now, this freedom, this peace, the ability to stand here and not look over our shoulder, that is the real wealth." Keisha nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. "We own our ground," she whispered, touching the locket. "Yes, we do," I said. A police cruiser drove by slowly. The officer inside waved. It was the same officer who had arrested Brad at the canyon. He knew us. He respected us. We weren't victims anymore. We were pillars. I took a deep breath of the cool evening air. It smelled of spring rain and engine oil. "Are you hungry, Keisha?" I asked. "Starving," she said. "How about we go to that diner on 4th Street I suggested? The one with the terrible coffee and the great pie." She laughed. "The one Brad hated because the booths were taped with duct tape. That is the one." "Let's go," she said. "I am buying. I got my first paycheck from the trust today." We turned and walked down the street, leaving the school behind us. We didn't drive. We walked. We walked like people who had nowhere to run and nothing to hide. Behind us, the sign of the Ruth Carter Vocational Center glowed in the darkness, a beacon for every kid who had ever been told they weren't enough. And somewhere in a concrete cell far away, a man in an orange jumpsuit was sitting on a metal cot, staring at a blank wall, wondering how he lost a game he thought was rigged in his favor. He lost because he bet on greed. We won because we bet on each other. I am Ezekiel Moses Carter. I am 72 years old. I don't own a garage anymore, but I own my soul. And looking at my daughter walking beside me, head held high, I knew that was more than enough. The greatest asset isn't the land, but the freedom to stand on it. Reflection. A wolf in a tailored suit is still a wolf. I spent my life fixing broken engines, but I almost missed the broken part in my own family. My daughter thought love meant submission. My son-in-law thought silence meant stupidity. They were both wrong. I learned that protecting your children doesn't mean shielding them from the world. It means teaching them to spot the snakes in the grass. Legacy isn't about the money you leave behind. It's about the spine you put in their backs. Never sign away your power to someone who hasn't earned the right to hold the pen. This is the story of how I saved my daughter and turned a trap into a triumph. If this story moved you, or if you believe in standing your ground against those who try to take what is yours, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their own strength. And let me know in the comments, what is the most important lesson you have learned from the elders in your life? I read every single comment. Until next time, keep your head up, keep your hands busy, and never let anyone write your story for you.